Chapter 893. While everyone was waiting, numerous figures began to walk out from the bewildering forest. In fact, many prodigies had already collected enough tokens on the second or third day, and walked out of the forest. For example, Huaxingjie, In Wufeng, Shengguanyan, Yushuangyan Gui Jianchou, Yanchou and other prodigies. At this moment, a pretty girl in a yellow dress with a scorpion tail braid was staring at the exit of the maze forest. She was Shengguanyan from the Shengguan family. She had always remembered how Shengguanyan had been pushed back by Yi Guqin in the maze forest. Humph, Duguwubai, don't tell me you can't even pass the second round? Shengguanyan's eyes darted around. She didn't hate Yi Guqin. She was just curious that a nameless young man like Yi Guqin was actually a dark horse. Of course, Shengguanyan didn't think of Yi Guqin as the sword demon. After all, in everyone's eyes, the sword demon was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with top prodigies like Wuxia. He wasn't on the same level as them. Why hasn't he come out yet? Yushuangyan stood on the other side with a cold expression. She frowned slightly. After so long, Yu Yuankui still hadn't come out. No matter what, Yu Yuankui was still a member of the Yu family. Yushuangyan couldn't ignore him. As time passed, more and more prodigies walked out one after another. Most of them had injuries on their bodies. Looks like it's about time, the venerable who was in charge of the selection said lightly. On the other side, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord also frowned. Although no prodigy from the Tianfeng territory had appeared. However, the prodigies from their two territories hadn't appeared either. Why hasn't he come out yet? The Purple Smoke Lord asked in a low voice. Maybe it took a lot of time to encircle and annihilate the people from the Tianfeng territory, the Yellow Dragon Lord said. Qin Zhen secretly clenched his fist and sighed in his heart. Was it right or wrong for me to trust Dugu Wubai? Qin Zhen sighed in his heart. A group of people flashed out of the maze forest. They were Yi Guqin, Qin Paisai and the others. Father. When Qin Paisai saw Qin Zhen, she couldn't help but feel joy in her heart. Paisai you. Qin Zhen's body shook, and his clenched fists trembled slightly. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out. Although there were far fewer people than when they had first entered, Qin Paisai and several other important geniuses were still present. This was already a great surprise for Qin Zhen. How is this possible? The eyes of the Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord trembled. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out, but not a single person from their two territories had appeared. Father, this time it's all thanks to young Master Dugu, Qin Paisai said. She couldn't help but look at Yi Guqin with respect. Many thanks to young Master Dugu. I really didn't misjudge you. Qin Zhen clasped his fists at Yi Guqin. It's no problem. This is a deal between you and me. I'm just fulfilling my promise. Yi Guqin waved his hand. When Qin Zhen heard this, a trace of shame appeared on his face. Even he had been wavering and hesitating, not trusting Yi Guqin and thinking that he had misjudged him. Where are the people from the Yellow Dragon Ridge and the Purple Smoke Ridge? The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord stepped forward and asked coldly. What about Yusin? Where are they? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord also asked coldly. From the moment Qin Paisai and the others appeared, they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Humph. Do you think I'm nothing? We're still in the middle of the selection. Qin Zhen stepped forward and his aura erupted, blocking the two tribal lords. Tribal lords, please stop arguing. The sovereign in charge of the selection snorted coldly in the sky. I just want to ask where the heavenly son of Yellow Dragon Ridge is. The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord suppressed his anger. What else can you do? If you want to harm others, you should be prepared to be harmed, Qin Paisai said coldly. After all, the Skywind Ridge had already fallen out with the two territories, so there was no need for them to worry about anything. Moreover, they were still in the middle of the selection. They couldn't blame others for their deaths, so the two tribal lords couldn't take revenge. The faces of the two lords were also solemn and extremely unsightly. How could they not understand that the people from the Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge, including their sons and daughters, had all been wiped out? Who is it? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord gritted his teeth, his body trembling. The Skywind Ridge definitely didn't have the ability to deal with them. not to mention the 4 heavenly sons of the sword ranking. Qin Paisai was at a loss for words. She wouldn't expose Yi Guqin. Is it that brat? The yellow dragon tribal lord's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yi Guqin. At this moment, Yu Shuangyan walked over with light steps. Seeing Yu Shuangyan, Qin Paisai and the others' expressions changed. The Skywind Ridge wasn't afraid of the 2 tribal lords. However, the Yu family was one of the aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance. Even if they didn't have a false saint, their strength was far from what a tribal lord could contend with. Where is Yu Yuankue? Yu Shuangyan's tone was cold as she asked condescendingly. Her aura was so oppressive that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others found it difficult to breathe. Because Yu Yuankue had only had conflicts with the Skywind Ridge before, Yu Shuangyan directly came to find him. Seeing this situation, many people in the surroundings looked over. Yi Guqin's body flashed, and he stood in front of the 2 girls. You have to pay the price for doing wrong, right? Facing Yu Shuangyan's oppressive aura, Yi Guqin was calm and composed. So, Yu Shuangyan's eyes narrowed, and her face was extremely cold. He's dead, Yi Guqin said calmly. What? Yu Yuankue, ranked 65th on the Sword Dao ranking, is dead? Did he die at the hands of this young man? But his aura is only at the 3rd level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge. As soon as these words came out, it caused a small commotion in the surroundings. 65th on the Sword Dao ranking wasn't particularly dazzling, but it wasn't weak either. He was considered one of the best among the geniuses. The surrounding people found it hard to imagine how a Phase 3 prodigy could kill a Phase 8 prodigy. Heh, this Dugu Wu Bai really knows how to cause trouble. Shang Guanyan pouted, but she was more curious about Yi Guqin. TSK, looks like another dark horse. Since he killed Yu Yuankue, he will replace him and become the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Many geniuses were paying attention to Yi Guqin. However, Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and the others still ignored them. They didn't even care about the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Yen worried guest, on the other hand, glanced at Yi Guqin thoughtfully under his bamboo hat. You have guts. Yu Shuangyan wasn't very angry, but her cold eyes seemed to be able to freeze people. What Yu Shuangyan cared about was not Yu Yuankue, but his identity as a member of the Yu family. In her opinion, no one dared to provoke the Yu family, even if it was just killing a dog of the Yu family. He's just digging his own grave. I hope you won't end up like him. Yi Guqin didn't want to waste time talking to Yu Shuangyan. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 894. Who was Yu Shuangyan? She was ranked 27th on the sword ranking and a 9th phase prodigy. Yu Yuankue couldn't compare to her in terms of strength. In everyone's eyes, even if Yi Guqin could kill Yu Yuankue, it was still wishful thinking for him to fight against Yu Shuangyan. Very good. Yu Shuangyan nodded, not saying anything. He wasn't angry nor was he enraged. However, this kind of attitude showed the cold killing intent in his heart even more. In her eyes, Yi Guqin was already a dead man, so there was no need for her to be angry with a dead man. Zai, young friend Dugu, this is going to be troublesome. Qingjin frowned. Yi Guqin and the others had offended Yu Shuangyan, so the 3rd stage wouldn't be peaceful. However, Qin Paisai chuckled and said, Father, you don't have to worry about that. Oh. Qingjin was surprised. He realized that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others didn't seem to be worried about Yi Guqin offending Yu Shuangyan. Father, listen to me. Qin Paisai whispered in Qingjin's ear. What is this true? Qingjin's body trembled as he looked at Yi Guqin. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but take a deep breath in disbelief. We really chose the right person this time. Qingjin sighed. At this moment, 2 more figures appeared in the misty forest. They were Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. They had completed their mission by a hair's breadth. Their eyes flickered, and they didn't dare to approach the people from Skywind Ridge. The people from Skywind Ridge also looked coldly at the Su siblings. Traitors were sometimes more hateful than enemies. Big brother, what should we do now? Su Jingjing's face was as pale as paper. They were like pigs in a mirror. They were no longer human. Now that Huang Feiyun and the others were dead, Skywind Ridge couldn't accept them. After all, Su Jingjing didn't show any mercy to Qin Paisai. There's only one way. Pass the last stage and join the academy, Su Wenbin said. That was their last chance. Alright, the second stage is over. Next, we'll count the tokens. Those who pass will rest on the spot for 3 days before facing the challenge of the final stage. High in the sky, the Venerable One spoke loudly. After that, the tally of tokens was completed. There were about 500 to 600 heavenly talents who passed the second round. It could be said that thousands of soldiers and thousands of horses were crossing a single plank bridge. However, the third stage would be even more difficult than the second stage. What's the third trial? Yi Guqian asked. The third test is to ascend the Thunder Prison Mountain. There is no chance of luck or trickery. It is completely dependent on one's own strength. Han Lingshuan's tone was slightly solemn. Obviously, the third test of the Lightning Prison Mountain wasn't going to be easy. In the second stage, although they had to rely on their own strength, they could also rely on their teammates or luck to pass. However, in the third stage there was absolutely no chance of luck. What exactly is the Lightning Prison Mountain? Yi Guqian asked curiously. This sword Honorable Ruins belongs to the Lightning Sword Honorable. His sword, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, is at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain. This mountain is also named after this sword. Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guqian's eyes flashed. Han Lingxian had previously told him that the sword of the Lightning Sword Honorable was a heavenly tribulation divine weapon. However, it had fallen to a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon, because it was damaged. I'm sure young Master Dugu has heard of the person who forged the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Han Lingxian said with a smile. Oh, who is it? Yi Guqian asked. South Forging Divine Hands, Forging Sky Edge. Han Lingxian said with respect. Yi Guqian was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword to be a divine weapon forged by the old drunkard. Rumor has it that when the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was forged, many rare materials were added, and the souls of 9 dragons were integrated. Therefore, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword possesses an extremely strong thunderous dragon aura. When it is placed at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain, it attracts thunderbolts from the sky all year round, and forms a thunder tide. Not only that, because of the 9 dragons' souls, some strange thunder spirit creatures have been formed on the Lightning Prison Mountain. They are quite powerful. Hearing Han Lingshuan's tone, Yi Guqian knew that the Lightning Prison Mountain was definitely not easy to break through. However, if it is a divine weapon forged by Senior Forging Sky Edge, then I have a better chance of subduing it, Yi Guqian thought to himself. Yi Guqian had learned the true teachings of Forging Sky Edge. Now that the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was an ownerless sword, Yi Guqian naturally had a way to resonate with the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword. Of course, the prerequisite was that Yi Guqian had to have the ability to subdue the sword. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The remaining 500 to 600 Sky Prides also braced themselves for the final round. In the final round, at the end of the Lightning Prison Mountain, the people from the 5 academies would personally witness the ceremony. It was also a chance for them to perform. Young friend Dugu, please. Qin Zhen clasped his hands together and said sincerely. Only when Qin Paisai and the others joined the 5 academies would Qin Zhen be completely at ease. Don't worry, I never make promises easily. Since I have made a promise, I will definitely keep it. Yi Guqian nodded slightly. Then, everyone set off towards the Lightning Prison Mountain in the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. About 2 hours later, everyone reached the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. Yi Guqian finally saw the Lightning Prison Mountain. The Lightning Prison Mountain was over 1,000 feet tall, and stood alone. The entire mountain was baptized by lightning all year round and turned silver. At the top of the Lightning Prison Mountain, countless lightning rays gathered and were extremely bright, making people look down on the scenery inside. Only the faint roar of a dragon and the rumbling of thunder could be heard. A strong dragon might and a lightning attributed might vaguely spread out, inspiring fear in everyone. Once someone steps into the range of the Lightning Prison Mountain, The 9-dragon lightning prison at the top of the mountain will resonate and attract endless heavenly lightning to form a lightning tide. Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes were solemn. Yi Guqian's eyes were deep. Not only was he not timid, but he was also eager to give it a try. The place where lightning gathered was a rare treasure place to temper one's body. To the others, it was a test. But to Yi Guqian, it was a blessed place. Look, that's the ship of the 5 academies. A sky pride was excited as he pointed into the distance. Everyone looked over and saw 5 huge ships floating in the void at the end of the horizon. Obviously, they were the people from the 5 academies. However, the 5 ships were too far away, and they could not see the people on the ships clearly. Everyone, the third test is to break through the lightning prison mountain. The entire lightning prison mountain is divided into the lower, middle, upper, and peak. Those who can step into the middle will be able to join the 5 academies. Those who can step into the upper will have a chance to become a bronze emblem disciple. Those who can step into the peak will be fought over by the 5 academies and have a chance to become a silver emblem disciple. In this last test, the people from the 5 academies will be watching. So do your best. Of course, fighting is not prohibited in the lightning prison mountain, as long as you have the strength to do so. The honorable master who was in charge of the test said loudly. All the sky prides rubbed their palms together, and the atmosphere instantly reached its peak. Everyone only had one goal, which was the peak of the lightning prison mountain. Chapter 895. In the Sword Dynasty, prodigies from all 360 ridges gathered to participate in the selection. Their goal was to compete for the opportunity to enter the 5 major academies. As for this final stage, although it was incomparably difficult, not a single person chose to retreat. This was their last chance. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 500 to 600 prodigies climbed up the lightning prison mountain like a swarm of locusts. The moment a prodigy stepped into the range of the lightning prison mountain, there was a loud bang. Above the lightning prison mountain, dark clouds covered the land. As the clouds rolled, the power of thunder and lightning gathered. At the peak of the lightning prison mountain, a blazing bolt of lightning crossed the sky and rushed into the dark clouds. Rumble. The thick pillar of lightning reached the sky, as if it had built a bridge between the clouds and the lightning prison mountain. Dragon roars sounded continuously. There were a total of 9 roars, and the sound was earth-shattering. Immediately, under the gaze of all the prodigies who were climbing the mountain, endless lightning was drawn down from the clouds and poured into the lightning prison mountain. Then, it turned into a shocking torrent of lightning that poured down. The terrifying torrent of lightning made the corners of all the prodigies' eyes twitch slightly. Boom. The torrent of lightning was extremely fast. In just a short moment, it rushed down from the peak of the mountain. Some of the weaker prodigies were directly blasted out of the range of the lightning prison mountain, amidst a series of screams. Those prodigies who were slightly injured spat out blood. Those who were seriously injured were charred black. They were only at the foot of the mountain, and the torrent of lightning was already so powerful. The prodigies could not imagine how powerful the power of thunder and lightning would be at the peak. Fortunately, the 5 academies selection required one to reach the middle level to pass. Therefore, these prodigies were not too afraid. One by one, they used all their means and began to climb. Yi Guqian, Kong Kong, and the rest of the Skywind Ridge also began to climb. As soon as Yi Guqian entered the lightning prison mountain, he fell into the range of the torrent of lightning. The power of thunder and lightning might be extremely dangerous to others, but to Yi Guqian, it was not much of a threat. Yi Guqian's body only shook slightly, and he began to adapt to the torrent of lightning. He was surprised to find that the power of lightning was slowly tempering his body. Yi Guqian had relied on the power of Saint Medicine to recover from his injuries. Although there weren't any major problems, there was still a trace of imperfection. However, Yi Guqian found that his physical body and even his genuine qi were being refined once again in the midst of the thunderstorm. This was a pleasant surprise for Yi Guqian. As for Kong Kong, when the thunder tide hit him, a faint golden light flashed on his body and blocked the thunder tide. On the other hand, Qin Paisai, Han Lingshuan, and the others could only use their true qi to defend themselves. They didn't have bodies as strong as Yi Guchen's that could withstand the power of lightning. Yi Guchen's relaxed attitude also attracted a lot of attention. TSK, Dugu Wubai from Tianfeng Ridge is indeed a dark horse. He can actually resist the thunder tide with his physical body. Yeah, if he didn't have a conflict with Yu Shuangyan, he would definitely enter the 5 academies. Some people shook their heads regretfully. Yi Guchen's potential as a dark horse caught everyone's attention. But unfortunately, he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. Everyone knew that Yu Shuangyan would never let Dugu Wubai and the others have a chance to enter the 5 academies. It was just that she hadn't made a move yet. As time passed, most of the geniuses began to adapt to the impact of the thunder tide. About 100 geniuses were directly blasted away by the thunder tide and completely lost their chance. The remaining 400 to 500 geniuses began to climb. At the forefront were naturally the geniuses who received the most attention. Hua Xingjia held a folding fan, and as he waved it, sword qi surged into the clouds as he tore through the thunder tide in front of him. Yin Wufeng was dressed in black and had a sinister look. His entire body was like a blood-colored sword. With a flash, he parted the thunder tide. Shangguan Yen tapped her toes lightly as she moved agilely. With a slash of her sword, she split the thunder tide into 2. Gui Jiancho was a young man dressed in a gray cloak. As his footsteps flashed, ghostly shadows appeared. The thunder tide was unable to do anything to him. Yancho was still wearing a bamboo hat. With a flute in hand, he used his Misty Rain illusory sword to withstand the thunder tide. There was also Yu Shuangyan. She didn't target Yi Guchen immediately. Instead, she chose to climb first. To these sword roll geniuses, ascending to the middle ranks was not difficult at all. Their goal was the upper ranks or even the pinnacle. After these top elites formed the first echelon, it was the second echelon, which was Yi Guchen and company. In fact, with Yi Guchen's strength, if he were to climb with all his might, no one would be his match. Even Hua Xingjia was no match for him. However, the thunder tide's tempering powers were greatly beneficial to Yi Guchen. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to climb. An hour later, the first echelon, Hua Xingjia and company, had already reached the middle ranks. Yi Guchen and company were about to reach the middle ranks. However, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and company were already extremely pale. They were drenched in sweat. With their strength, they could only reach the middle ranks at best. As for the remaining Skywind Ridge elites, other than Zhuqiuqing and Zhenlang, the rest had long been swept away by the thunder tide. Now only Yi Guchen, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, Zhuqiuqing, and Zhenlang were left. Hold on for a little longer, Yi Guchen said with a calm expression. His promise was to help Qin Paisai and company enter the 5 great academies. As long as they reached the middle ranks, it would be over. However, at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly blasted towards Skywind Ridge. Be careful, Han Lingxian cried out. Yi Guchen flicked his finger. The 6-pulse divine sword transformed into a finger light and collided with the bolt of lightning. However, not far away, the figure of a beast wrapped in lightning appeared. It's a thunder spirit. Qin Paisai bit her lip. The thunder prison mountain was so big, but they just had to encounter a thunder spirit. A thunder spirit was a special existence formed by the special terrain of this place. The closer one was to the upper ranks of the thunder prison mountain, the stronger the thunder spirit's strength. This thunder spirit's aura was roughly comparable to a stage 7 prodigy. Although it wasn't fatal, one had to know that Yi Guchen and company were still resisting the impact of the thunder tide. Under such circumstances, encountering a thunder spirit would be quite troublesome. Don't worry about it. Continue climbing. Leave this thunder spirit to me, Yi Guchen said calmly. But Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but stopped. Don't worry, Yi Guchen said casually. The thunder tide at this level couldn't affect him too much. Whoosh! Yi Guchen wielded his sword and collided with the thunder spirit. However, the sword directly pierced through the thunder spirit. The thunder spirit opened its mouth and roared, spitting out a ball of lightning. That thunder spirit doesn't have a body of flesh and blood. We can only use true energy to disperse it. Qin Paisai shouted. Oh! Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he poured his true energy into the sword. The blood-red sword light spread out and blasted towards the thunder spirit. After a while, the thunder spirit was finally defeated by Yi Guqin. A bolt of lightning suddenly entered Yi Guqin's body. This is... Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with surprise. He felt very surprised. Chapter 896. This ray of lightning was very strange. After it entered Yi Guqin's body, not only did it cause the purple void mysterious lightning in his body to move, it also contained a very faint sword concept. Could this be lightning sword essence? Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. He did not expect that after killing the thunder spirit, there would be such a harvest. However, the lightning sword essence contained in this ray of lightning was too faint. It was impossible for Yi Guqin to comprehend the lightning sword essence with this. Could it be because of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword? Yi Guqin could not help but think. The previous owner of the 9-dragon thunder prison, Thunder Sword Venerable, was probably a mighty figure who comprehended the lightning sword principle. Finally, he integrated the lightning sword principle into the 9-dragon thunder prison. If that was the case, if Yi Guqin could get the 9-dragon thunder prison, wouldn't it mean that he also had a chance to comprehend the lightning sword principle? Thinking of this, Yi Guqin could not help but have a trace of anticipation. For a sword cultivator, the sword principle was the most irresistible temptation. Moreover, Yi Guqin was not worried that the sword principle he comprehended would be complicated. He had a premonition that the sword principle was very important to his future cultivation. Therefore, Yi Guqin did not reject the lightning sword principle. Just as Yi Guqin was pondering in his heart, a few more thunder spirits appeared and blocked Qin Paisai and the other's path to the middle of the mountain. How could this be? Although there are thunder spirits on the Thunder Prison Mountain, most of them are concentrated in the upper and top levels. How could it be so coincidental? Qin Paisai saw the situation and her face turned slightly ugly. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed as he suddenly felt a spying gaze in the dark. He flicked his finger, and the sword chi finger light blasted behind a mountain rock in the distance. As the gravel exploded, 2 figures flashed and retreated in a panic. It's you. Qin Paisai's eyes were sharp and saw the two at a glance. It was Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. These thunder spirits were actually lured here by their scheme. Retreat. The 2 siblings of the Su family abruptly retreated. Yi Guqin hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Qin Paisai and the others who were trapped by the thunder spirits. He didn't hesitate, temporarily giving up on chasing after the Su siblings. The sword in his hand trembled, and sword light split the sky, sweeping towards the lightning spirits. In less than a quarter of an hour, all of the thunder spirits were dealt with. Strands of lightning also entered Yi Guqin's body. Not only did it speed up the tempering of Yi Guqin's body, but it also made Yi Guqin's true energy much more vigorous and pure. If I can kill a few more thunder spirits, I might be able to break through. Yi Guqin thought to himself. Of course, these few strands of lightning were far from enough for Yi Guqin to comprehend the lightning sword essence. Those Su siblings are really despicable. Qin Paisai gnashed her teeth in anger. She never thought that the Su siblings would use such a method to deal with them. They won't be able to jump around for long. Let's hurry to the middle level. Yi Guqin's tone was indifferent. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian and the others nodded. The most important thing for them now was to obtain the qualifications to enter the 5 great academies. Soon, under Yi Guqin's lead, Han Lingxian and the others also smoothly approached the middle level. However, at a certain moment, Yi Guqin's footsteps abruptly stopped. Young Master Dugu, what's wrong? Han Lingxian and the others also stopped. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Yi Guqin was indifferent, looking indifferently at the slender figure in front of him. The woman's white clothes were as red as blood, her face incomparably cold and arrogant, as if she was always looking down on everyone. You Shuangyan. Yi Guqin's tone was indifferent. You. Qin Paisai and the others' eyes widened as they saw Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing standing behind Yu Shuangyan. They instantly understood. As it turned out, the Su siblings had actually sought refuge with Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan was too lazy to deal with them, so she ordered the Su siblings to do it. The Su siblings attracted the lightning spirit, but it couldn't deal with the Tianfeng Ridge disciples, so they could only ask Yu Shuangyan to do it. Yu Shuangyan couldn't let the Tianfeng Ridge disciples successfully enter the middle level and enter the 5 great academies. If that happened, it would be difficult to take revenge on Yu Yuankue. After all, even the Yu family couldn't deal with the disciples of the academies for no reason. Damn it! Qin Paisai and the others clenched their fists. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Once they crossed it, they would be able to enter the 5 great academies. In the end, Yu Shuangyan was like a natural moat, blocking in front of them. Yu Shuangyan wasn't someone that Yu Yuankue and Gong Yangming could compare to. As a genius ranked 27th on the sword roll, her strength couldn't be underestimated. Kong Kong wasn't as worried as Qin Paisai and the others. She looked at ease. It was as if following Yi Guqin wouldn't be an obstacle. I'll give you 2 choices. First, destroy your own cultivation and get out. Second, I'll personally take action. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. Yu Shuangyan clenched her fist, and a long sword that looked like it was made of ice appeared. The blade emitted a chilling aura. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. The lords and people from the aristocratic families who were watching the battle outside the Thunder Prison Mountain fixed their eyes on Yi Guqin and the others. The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord laughed coldly as they looked at Qin Zhen. Haha, reincarnation is inevitable. The heavens will spare no one. The Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge's geniuses had all been killed. The 2 lords were heartbroken, but they couldn't take revenge. At this moment, they could finally witness the destruction of the Tianfeng Ridge with their own eyes. Qin Zhen's expression was solemn, and he didn't say a word. Little friend Dugu, if your identity is really... Qin Zhen thought to himself. If Qin Paisai's guess was true, then Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guqin's footsteps. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yu Shuangyan's expression was cold, but her murderous intent was overflowing. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. The aura of a Stage 9 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth made them feel suffocated. Yi Guqin's gaze was indifferent. With a flip of his wrist, a long sword appeared in his hand. It seems like you're the same as Yu Yuankue. Both of you want to die. Yi Guqin took a step forward and unleashed the full power of his Stage 3 cultivation. His vigorous genuine qi gushed out like a volcano. Qin Zhen's guess was right. Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guqin's footsteps. Feeling Yi Guqin's explosive aura, Yu Shuangyan's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, she still didn't choose to retreat. Her icy sword pierced toward Yi Guqin. Wherever it passed, the ground was covered with a layer of frost. What Yu Shuangyan comprehended was actually also the ice sword Dao. Flying frost sword technique. Yu Shuangyan's Stage 9 aura erupted. Her true energy resonated with the surrounding heaven and earth, amplifying it by 9 times. The biting cold and vigorous sword energy enveloped Yi Guqin. Yu Shuangyan was confident that she could suppress Yi Guqin. Facing Yu Shuangyan's move, Yi Guqin's expression was indifferent. He held the sword in his right hand, raised his left hand, and a pitch-black flame ignited. His hand brushed the blade. Inch by inch, the blade burned with black flames. It was the Nirvana demonic heart flame. Yi Guqin raised his sword. His true energy poured into the blade, causing the demonic flame to surge. A blazing aura rose. The 2 swords collided, and violent sparks erupted. One side was covered with frost and snow, while the other side was scorched earth. Vigorous sword energy rippled like waves, sweeping in all directions. Even the thunderbolts that were rushing down were scattered by the shock waves. Chapter 897. After the collision, Yu Shuangyan's eyes once again revealed a look of surprise. She couldn't understand how Yi Guqin, who was only at the 3rd stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, could have such powerful true qi that he could resist her true qi at the 9th stage. How could this be? Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were also dumbfounded. In their eyes, Yi Guqin had been a cripple without any true qi, but now he could contend with Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th on the sword ranking. This kind of contrast made them feel extremely unreal. Not only them, but the spectators on the outskirts of the Thunder Prison Mountain were also surprised. That young man from Skywind Ridge is a dark horse. He killed Yu Yuan Kuei and the others, but now he can contend with Yu Shuangyan. Doesn't that mean he's at least in the top 30 of the sword ranking? Many lords looked surprised as they turned to look at Qin Zhen. Skywind Ridge had really picked up a treasure this time. Qin Zhen's tense heart relaxed a little, and he let out a deep breath. Damn it! When did such a monster appear in Skywind Ridge? The purple smoke overlord's expression was extremely ugly. Do you think he's... The yellow dragon lord seemed to have thought of something, and his heart skipped a beat. That's impossible. The purple smoke lord's face stiffened. A great battle broke out on the Thunder Prison Mountain. In the surging thunder, Yi Guqin and Yu Shuangyan's swords collided. Their figures flashed, and they fought fiercely. Normally, these geniuses wouldn't fight unless they reached the end. This was because fighting in the lightning tide consumed too much true qi. If their true qi was used up too much, they wouldn't have enough energy to reach the top. However, this didn't affect Yi Guqin at all. Yi Guqin could resist the thunder with his body alone. His qi alone was enough to make it difficult for his true qi to be exhausted. However, the situation was not good for Yu Shuangyan. She thought that Yi Guqin was at most a little stronger than Yu Yuan Kuei. When it came to the real fight, Yu Shuangyan finally understood how difficult it was to deal with the young man in front of her. Flying Frost Sword Art, 9 Heavens Frost Cry. The longer they delayed, the worse it would be for Yu Shuangyan. Therefore, she directly used the ultimate move of the Flying Frost Sword technique. Although the Flying Frost Sword technique was only a superior king-level sword technique, the power of its ultimate move was no weaker than a lower royal-level sword technique. Void Destruction. Yi Guqin also used the ultimate move of the Great Void Sword Wave. The sword edge vibrated in the air and collided with Yu Shuangyan's ice sword. The cold sword energy that could almost freeze the void was directly shattered by the sword wave. Ice Sword Dao, Ice Domain. Yu Shuangyan finally displayed the sword Dao that she had comprehended. To be able to comprehend the sword Dao at this age, even if it was just an ordinary sword Dao, was enough to be called a genius. Unfortunately, the Yi Guqin that Yu Shuangyan was facing was not a genius, but a monster. A blood-red light burst out from Yi Guqin's eyes. A terrifying blood-red sword essence surged out from his body like a sea of blood. That's Sword Dao. That young man has also comprehended the Sword Dao. Some of the lords who were watching the fight from the periphery were shocked. And it's not an ordinary Sword Dao. It's the Supreme Azura Sword Dao. One of the lords could feel the killing intent in the blood-red sword energy, and couldn't help but change his expression slightly. There was a world of difference between an ordinary Sword Dao and a Supreme Sword Dao. The difficulty and power of comprehending the Sword Dao were also worlds apart. It's the Supreme Sword Dao, the Azura Sword Dao, that is best at attacking. There was quite an uproar around the Thunder Prison Mountain. After all, the Supreme Sword Dao could only be seen in the top 10 geniuses on the sword roll. The lords were indeed surprised that this unknown young man from Tianfeng Ridge actually possessed a peerless sword principle. As expected, Qin Zhen's eyes were also slightly shocked. The appearance of the Azura Sword Dao made Qin Zhen even more certain of Yi Guqin's identity. Who are you? The indifference on Yu Shuangyan's face finally disappeared completely. What replaced it was extreme astonishment. The strength of the young man in front of her had far exceeded her expectations. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile. He wasn't worried that the Azura Sword Dao would expose his true identity. After all, although there were very few people who comprehended the Supreme Azura Sword Dao, it wasn't unique to Yi Guqin. I've warned you many times, but unfortunately, you don't know what's good for you. Yi Guqin brandished his sword and performed the god-slaying sword technique. With the enhancement of the Azura Sword Dao, the power was even more powerful. In addition, Yi Guqin's cultivation of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth also made his sword moves more powerful than before. Ice Domain Imprison. Yu Shuangyan gritted her teeth. Her iceberg-like aloofness was completely shattered in front of Yi Guqin's strength. She could no longer maintain her condescending arrogance. In the surrounding void, icy sword qi condensed as if to form an ice cage, imprisoning Yi Guqin within. Azura Blood C18 levels. Yi Guqin's eyes were completely swallowed by the blood-red color, like two blood moons. After a long time, He finally performed the Azura Sword Dao's sword domain again. The Azura Blood Sea 18 levels. The blood-red sword intent spread out like a tide. And in the endless blood sea, the 18 levels of blood prison overturned the earth and sky. Peerless Sword Dao domain. Yu Shuangyan's face turned serious. For the first time, she felt that it was tricky. In her eyes, her only real opponents in the 5 academies selection were Hua Xingjia, Yin Wufeng, and Gue Jianqiu. But now Yi Guqin, the dark horse, had caught her off guard. Rumble. The Azura Blood Sea 18 levels collided with the Ice domain. The 2 Sword Dao domains collided, bursting forth with monstrous sword chi that even separated the surging thunder tide. Break. In Yi Guqin's eyes, blood-red light burst out 3 feet long, and the Azura Blood Sea surged to the sky. The 18 levels of blood prison directly broke the Ice domain in an extremely forceful and domineering way. Puchi. Yu Shuangyan's delicate body was hit by the impact, and she couldn't help but retreat. A stream of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, which was particularly glaring against her snow-white skin. Yu Shuangyan was injured. The lords and aristocratic families who were watching the battle didn't expect this. Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th on the sword list, was actually injured by Yi Guqin. I miscalculated. If I continue to be entangled here, it will be difficult for me to reach the upper level, or even the top with the other geniuses. Yu Shuangyan struggled in her heart. She didn't expect that she would be forced to this extent by a nameless young man. Although she also had a trump card that she hadn't used yet, it was obviously impossible for her to use it now. It was a move that she had prepared for Hua Xingjia, Yin Wufeng, and the other geniuses. Moreover, compared to avenging Yu Yu and Kuei, it was more important for her to get a good result and enter the 5 academies. Thinking of this, no matter how unwilling Yu Shuangyan was, her delicate body flashed quickly, and she retreated like a snowflake. Yu Shuangyan, who had an extraordinary reputation, actually chose to flee. Qin Paisai and the other geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge were dumbfounded. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing's eyes were also dazed. This was also something that they had never expected. Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed slightly. Yu Shuangyan wasn't too stupid. He couldn't fight to the death with Yu Shuangyan now. However, there were some small fries that had to be dealt with. Yi Guqin couldn't help but look at the Su siblings. Chapter 898. Feeling Yi Guqin's cold gaze, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing trembled violently. Without the slightest hesitation, they immediately retreated and left. If they were to face Yi Guqin now, there would be no suspense. But how could Yi Guqin let them go? Although a fly was small, it was still annoying. Yi Guqin took a step forward, and arrived in front of Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing in the blink of an eye. Compared to enemies, traitors were more hateful. Seeing this, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others did not have the slightest sympathy on their faces. Previously, the Su siblings betrayed Skywind Ridge without the slightest hesitation. Now they even attracted the lightning spirit to frame them. Spare my life, I'm from the Su family. Su Wenbin's body was trembling, and his voice was shaking. No one was unafraid of death, and people like Su Wenbin were even more afraid of death. Otherwise, when they were surrounded by the 2 great ridges, he would not have betrayed them so quickly. Dugu Wu Bai, we were wrong, we shouldn't have treated you like this. Let us go, we can make up for it. Su Jingjing's delicate face was also incomparably pale. These 2 siblings no longer had the arrogance, wanton, and condescending attitude they had when they were at Skywind Ridge. Their bodies trembled, and they looked at Yi Guqin with fear in their eyes. Facing such people, Yi Guqin was too lazy to say anything more. 2 sword lights swept out, ending their lives. You really are. Su Wenbin clutched his neck and fell to the ground, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Su Jingjing was the same, lying in a pool of blood. At the last moment of their lives, they finally understood what kind of terrifying character they had provoked. It was a pity that he had comprehended it too late. Let's go. After casually killing the 2, Yi Guqin said indifferently. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others also glanced at Yi Guqin. Those pitch-black eyes did not have the slightest fluctuation of emotion, like a cold death god. For the first time, Han Lingxian felt that she did not understand Yi Guqin at all. Soon, Yi Guchen led the people from Tianfeng Ridge to the junction between the lower and middle levels. When they looked around, they saw a huge screen of lightning blocking their path. The reason why the lightning prison mountain was divided into lower, middle, upper, and peak levels was because of the existence of these lightning curtains. A faint fear appeared in the eyes of Qin Paisai and the rest as they looked at the lightning screen that was pouring down like a waterfall. "Follow me," Yi Guchen said. After bringing Qin Paisai to the middle level, he would have fulfilled his promise to Qin Zhen. "That won't do. If we enter together, the power of the lightning screen will increase greatly." Qin Paisai smiled bitterly and shook her head. If it was so easy to pass through the lightning screen, many people would have already reached the middle level. It was precisely because this lightning screen was too difficult to pass that a large number of sky prides were blocked. "Don't worry, all of you stand behind me," Yi Guchen said calmly. Han Lingxian looked at Yi Guchen with a trace of infatuation. She could only feel this kind of security from Yi Guchen. "Amitba, don't hesitate. Follow Big Brother, and you'll have meat to eat." Kong Kong was not worried at all as he put his palms together and chanted, "Little monk, do you still eat meat?" Qin Paisai and the rest could not help but laugh. The heavy atmosphere also eased a little. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Paisai and the rest still chose to follow behind Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen stomped his foot on the ground, and a surge of extremely powerful true energy burst out, turning into a barrier that enveloped Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, Kong Kong, and the rest. Then, everyone rushed towards the lightning screen. The moment they touched it, a loud rumble resounded. The power of lightning crazily poured down like a waterfall, drowning Yi Guchen and the rest. Don't overestimate yourself." Outside the lightning prison mountain, the purple smoke territorial lord and the yellow dragon territorial lord coldly snorted. They could not wait to see the heavenly wind ridge get annihilated and fall under the lightning tide. Qin Zhen's palms were also sweating as he stared at the place where the lightning surged. Boom! At this moment, the place where the lightning fell seemed to tremble. Silver-purple lightning spread out, resisting the lightning tide. That is. Everyone's gaze froze. A young man's figure slowly stepped into the air. Endless silver-purple lightning surged out of his body, resisting the lightning tide. It was as if he alone was enough to resist the boiling lightning tide. "You can pass," Yi Guchen said. Han Lingxian, Kong Kong, Qin Paisai, and the rest flashed and quickly passed through. When they stepped on the ground of the middle layer, Qin Paisai let out a long sigh of relief. They did not have much true energy left. They had relied on Yi Guchen's strength to reach the middle layer. At this moment, they looked back and were shocked to see Yi Guchen alone standing in the sky, undergoing the baptism of countless lightning tides. He was like the Lord of Lightning. Why didn't young Master Dugu pass? Zhuo Qiuqing was extremely surprised. If it were anyone else, it would be good if they could barely pass, but Yi Guchen was still lingering. He's using the power of lightning to refine his true energy body. What a monster! Qin Paisai exclaimed. Thinking back to the time when she looked down on Yi Guchen, Qin Paisai's cheeks burned. After a full hour, Yi Guchen rushed out of the lightning screen. His body and true energy had been refined once again, especially his true energy. Yi Guchen vaguely felt that he was not too far away from breaking through to the fourth stage. Yi Guchen landed in front of Han Lingxian and the rest. "I've fulfilled my promise. What do you plan to do next?" "Thank you for your help, young Master Dugu. We were blind before and doubted you many times." Qin Paisai, Zhuo Qiuqing, Zhen Lang and the rest sincerely apologized. "There's no need to say such things." Yi Guchen waved his hand. He did not care about this kind of thing. "We know our own limits. It's fortunate that we were able to reach the middle layer. Next we'll withdraw," Qin Paisai said. They were already satisfied with the opportunity to join the 5 great academies. They had nothing else to ask for. It would be difficult for them to continue on the next path, unless they were top geniuses. "This little monk will continue," Kong Kong said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly and did not say anything. Everyone had their own choice. He turned around and continued to climb up under the terrifying pressure of the lightning tide. "Young Master Dugu!" Han Lingxian couldn't help but shout. Yi Guchen stopped in his tracks. Lingxian believes in you. You can reach the peak, Han Lingxian said firmly. Heh. Yi Guchen smiled and continued to move forward without turning back. Can young Master Dugu really reach the peak? Even though they knew that Yi Guchen's strength was extraordinary, the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain was filled with endless heavenly lightning. Perhaps only people at the level of Wuxia were qualified to reach the peak. Qin Paisai and the others were not too sure. Young Master Dugu is someone who can create miracles, Han Lingxian firmly believed. Whether it was comprehending the imperial sword steel, or the kneeling of the Han family ancestor, or the three great heavenly gates shaking the world, Yi Guchen had created countless shocking miracles along the way. Therefore, Han Lingxian was looking forward to seeing Yi Guchen reach the peak and look down on everyone. Chapter 899. Next, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the rest left the Thunder Prison Mountain. They had already obtained the opportunity to enter the 5 academies. As for Yi Guchen and Kong Kong, they continued to climb the Thunder Prison Mountain. After entering the middle level, the lightning tide became even more turbulent and rushed down like a waterfall. There were only a few dozen Sky Prides who could continue climbing. The rest of the Sky Prides were either eliminated or chose to give up after stepping into the middle level. Facing the turbulent lightning tide, Yi Guchen did not have any defensive means and directly endured it with his body. His physique became more solid. Most importantly, after being tempered by the lightning power, his true qi was faintly showing signs of advancing to the 4th stage. However, what surprised Yi Guchen the most was Kong Kong. Kong Kong's strength was at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to hold on for so long. However, golden light appeared on the surface of Kong Kong's body, making him look like a little golden man plated with gold. On the surface of his body, swastikas vaguely appeared, which looked very strange. Kong Kong really has a secret. Looking at Kong Kong's strange appearance, Yi Guchen thought to himself. Kong Kong's physique seemed to be unusual. However, Yi Guchen did not ask further. Everyone had their own secrets. Comfortable. Kong Kong was a little smug, and his chubby cheeks were trembling. Not far away, some other Sky Prides gritted their teeth. Except for Huaxingjie and a few other Sky Prides, most of the remaining Sky Prides were fighting hard. Look, Huaxingjie broke through to the upper level. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, there were some exclamations. Huaxingjie waved the folding fan in his hand, and Sword Qi rushed into the sky, breaking the lightning light curtain in the middle level, and entering the upper level of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Huaxingjie was the first to break through to the upper level. Then Yin Wufeng, Shangguanyan, Gui Jianqiu, and the others broke through one after another. After that, Yushuangyan Yin Choke, and the others broke through again. Hey, do you guys think that Sword Demon is on the Thunder Prison Mountain? Some of the spectators were very curious. He's definitely there. How can a genius who can suppress the top 3 of the sword rankings be eliminated? It's just that we don't know who he is for now. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, everyone was discussing animatedly. They were all guessing who the Sword Demon was. Inside the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yi Guchen was still undergoing the baptism of the Thunder Tide. However, he discovered that as time passed, the assistance provided by the lightning energy was becoming smaller and smaller. It seems like this force of refinement has reached its limit. If I want to improve further, I'll have to reach the peak, or acquire the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. At this point, he no longer had to deliberately slow down, because the tempering power was no longer effective on him. Since that was the case, Yi Guchen naturally wouldn't waste any time. Boom. Yi Guchen activated his boundless sea of qi, and a terrifying true qi burst out from his body like a tornado. Yi Guchen stomped his feet on the ground, and his body flashed out like a cannonball. Wherever he passed, the thunder tide split open and broke through like a bolt of lightning. Previously, he had been resisting with his physical body. Now that he had activated his true qi to resist, his climbing speed immediately skyrocketed. This Brother Dugu is amazing. Kong Kong was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly chased after him. Rumble. The turbulent thunder tide couldn't stop Yi Guchen's footsteps at all. He rushed directly to the barrier between the middle and upper layers at an extremely fast speed. Break. Yi Guqin didn't stop at all. The extreme void dark thunder and purple lightning nether thunder in his body merged into one, and turned into a silver purple void dark thunder. Yi Guqin raised his hand and the purple void dark thunder spread out, turning into a thunder waterfall, and bombarding the thunder barrier in front of him. With a loud crack, the thunder light curtain between the middle and upper layers was directly torn apart by the purple void dark thunder. Yi Guqin's body flashed and stepped onto the upper layer. That young man from Skywind Ridge is so fast. That young man is called Dugu Wubai. He's really a dark horse. He killed Yu Yuankui, who ranked 65th on the sword roll, and defeated Yu Shuangyan just now. Yi Guqin's rapid speed attracted attention even if he didn't want to. Is this young Master Duga's true strength? The Sky Prides of Skywind Ridge, who had already left the Thunder Prison Mountain, were so shocked that their jaws almost fell to the ground. Yi Guqin had shown such speed from the beginning. Perhaps even Hua Xingjie couldn't beat him. I even said before that we shouldn't let young Master Duga drag us down. In the end, we're the ones who are really dragging him down. Qin Paisai was completely convinced and smiled bitterly. Zhuoqiuqing, Zhenlang, and the other Sky Prides were also a little ashamed. If it weren't for helping them break through the middle layer, Yi Guqin's speed wouldn't be slower than Hua Xingjie's. Only Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes flashed with unprecedented splendor. She had to admit that such a young man was very attractive. Qingjin also sighed. He had made the right bet this time. The purple smoke overlord and the yellow dragon overlord looked as if they had eaten a fly. With Yi Guqin's current strength, it was almost certain that he would enter the 5 academies. He might even be valued by the academies. At that time, it would be wishful thinking for them to take revenge. Yi Guqin broke through the upper layer of the Thunder Prison Mountain. That terrifying lightning tide seemed to have multiplied, turning into one huge wave after another as it smashed over. Even with Yi Guqin's cultivation, he still felt the pressure. However, his speed didn't slow down much. Not long after Yi Guqin broke through the upper layer, Kong Kong also broke through. Golden swastika runes appeared on his body to resist the Thunder Tide's bombardment. There were only 20 to 30 Sky Prides still in the Thunder Prison Mountain. These people were the ones that the 5 academies really wanted to compete for. On the 5 ships in the sky, the people from the 5 academies began to pay attention to the Thunder Prison Mountain. Previously, the Thunder Prison Mountain was a mixed bag of good and bad people, so the people from the academies didn't bother to observe. But now, those who could stay were all 1 in a million Sky Prides. Haha, as expected, the first place of this selection is undoubtedly Hua Xingjie. On the ship of Tensei College, Elder Hua Emo stroked his beard and smiled. Hua Xingjie was a member of the Hua family, so he was naturally happy. That's not necessarily true. Have you forgotten about the Sword Demon? Bei Xian, Elder of Sacred Cliff College, retorted. The Sword Demon was only amazing during the test. I haven't seen his true strength with my own eyes. The test is just a test, Elder Hua Emo said lightly. He didn't mind enrolling the Sword Demon into Tensei College, but it couldn't overshadow Hua Xingjie's excellence. On the ship of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu's attention wasn't on the Thunder Prison Mountain. She wasn't interested in coming. On the other hand, Jiang Fengmian was a disciple of Sun Moon College's Holy Emblem. He was supposed to be on the ship of Sun Moon College, but now he was beside Mu Xingzu. Miss Mu, who do you think will be the winner of this selection? Jiang Fengmian was like a modest gentleman, and his tone was gentle. I don't know and I don't care. Mu Xingzu was absent-minded. She had been in this state ever since she heard the news of Yi Guqin's death. Hey, I think it will be Hua Xingjie, and that mysterious Sword Demon is also possible. I wonder who will be the Sword Demon? Yinglang chimed in. Do you think everyone is worthy of the title of Sword Demon? Mu Xingzhu sighed sorrowfully with a knot in her stomach. Chapter 900. Back then, in order to save her, Yi Guqin transformed into the Sword Demon and wiped out hundreds of people with a single sword strike. Blood rained down from the sky as he opened up a path of life and death. Mu Xingzhu still could not forget that scene. In Mu Xingzhu's heart, Only Yi Guchen was worthy of the title of Sword Master and Sword Demon. The rest of the people were just imposters. Therefore, Mu Xingzu did not care about the so-called Sword Demon. Jiang Fengnian did not care about Mu Xingzu's indifference and smiled gently. Oh, then let's wait and see. Under the attention of the people from the 5 great academies, as well as all the lords, aristocratic families, and heaven's prides outside the mountain, the remaining 20 to 30 heaven's prides began their final assault on the peak. Although everyone knew that it was almost impossible to break through the upper level and reach the peak. In the past, only the top 15 on the sword ranking and above were qualified to reach the peak. Do you think the Sword Demon has a chance to reach the peak? It's hard to say. Although the Sword Demon overshadowed the top 3 on the sword ranking in the 3 Heavenly Gates test, we don't know his true strength. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, countless people were discussing. Although they did not know who the Sword Demon was for the time being, everyone was certain in their hearts. The real Sword Demon must be hidden among these 20 to 30 people. Amidst wave after wave of lightning, Yi Guchen went against the trend. Purple void lightning wrapped around his body, and his vigorous true qi broke through the lightning waves. We're almost at the peak. Yi Guchen looked into the distance. The back of Hua Xingjie and the others was even higher. Endless lightning flooded the peak, and one could vaguely feel an explosive sword qi. It must be the aura emitted by the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen was determined to win the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Finally, Hua Xingjie and the others approached the peak. However, they suddenly stopped in their tracks. Because there was not only a thicker lightning barrier between the upper level and the peak. Most importantly, outside the barrier, there were 4 lightning spirits with extremely powerful auras. The cultivation of each lightning spirit had reached the divine dwelling stage. 4 thunder spirits comparable to the divine dwelling stage. Seeing this, the faces of the remaining 20 to 30 geniuses turned extremely dark. After persevering to this point, everyone wanted to reach the peak. After all, if they managed to reach the peak, not only would they be highly sought after by the 5 academies, but they would also be given the identity of a Silver Emblem disciple. In the 5 great academies, the students were divided into Bronze Emblem disciples, Silver Emblem disciples, Gold Emblem disciples, and the most honorable Holy Emblem disciples. Students of different ranks received different treatment. If he could directly obtain the identity of a Silver Emblem disciple, it would undoubtedly be much more convenient for him to enter the 5 major academies. He would also be able to obtain more resources. But the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits were like 4 mountains, blocking the path of all the heaven prides. Even Hua Xingjie, this kind of 9th phase peak heaven's pride, had an incomparably solemn expression. Although there was only a slight difference between the peak of the 9th phase and the divine dwelling stage, the difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. Not to mention that the Thunder Spirit's cultivation was much higher than that of a cultivator of the same level. Moreover, they were still under the impact of the lightning tide. And their true qi was being depleted every moment. Everyone, there is only one way left, Hua Xingjie said. The eyes of the other heaven prides flashed. Yu Shuangyan glanced at Yi Guchen with a hint of coldness and wariness. The heaven prides who were walking in front did not see the battle between Yu Shuangyan and Yi Guchen. Therefore, Hua Xingjie and the others did not know that Yi Guchen had the strength to defeat Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan did not take the initiative to say it, as if she was scheming something. Looking at Yu Shuangyan's cold eyes, Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent. He did not take the initiative to attack. He wanted to see what Hua Xingjie had in mind. The little monk, Kong Kong, also came up and stood beside Yi Guchen. I'm sure everyone knows that even without the 4 thunder spirits, some of you will not be able to break through the lightning barrier. Hua Xingjie said indifferently. Young Master Hua, what do you mean by that? A heaven's pride asked coldly. Heaven's prides who could climb to the top were all capable. They were not ordinary people. Hua Xingjie's words were a little harsh. I'm just speaking the truth. I have a suggestion. Let those who are weaker and have no hope of breaking through the barrier distract the thunder spirits. Of course, my Hua family will definitely compensate you. Hua Xingjie's lips curved into a faint smile. His words caused the expressions of the surrounding heavens prides to change. Hua Xingjie wanted to use them as cannon fodder? Hua Xingjie, this is not a good idea, Yin Choke said. Among the heavens prides present, the weaker ones were mostly from the faction of rogue cultivators. What's wrong with that? We're not chasing them away for free. Young Master Hua has already done his best, Yu Shuangyan said. She and Yin Choke had always been at odds. I agree as well. Some of you here indeed have no hope of reaching the top. Why don't you make some contributions? My Yin family will also compensate you. We won't mistreat you. Yin Wufeng also stood out with an evil smile on his face. Although Shengguan Yen was also a member of the aristocratic family, she did not speak. Her almond-shaped eyes darted around, waiting to see what would happen. What if we don't agree? Gui Jianchou asked. If we don't agree, then no one will be able to reach the top. Wouldn't that be a pity? Hua Xingjie said with a faint smile. The atmosphere became tense. Vaguely, a strong smell of gunpowder filled the air. Yu Shuangyan glanced at Yi Guchen. Her gaze was deep and cold. She said, Shuangyan has a suggestion. These two, one is a child with only a stage 5 cultivation, and the other is only a stage 3 cultivation. They are suitable candidates. Yu Shuangyan changed the topic and directed it to Yi Guchen and Kong Kong. Oh indeed. Hua Xingjie glanced at Yi Guchen with a faint look of surprise in his eyes. Obviously he did not notice that Yi Guchen was only a stage 3 cultivation. He was surprised that Yi Guchen could make it this far with only a stage 3 cultivation. It was very surprising. But no matter how surprising, a stage 3 was still a stage 3. With such a cultivation, it was impossible for him to pass through the lightning barrier. That can be done. I agree. Yin Wufeng glanced at Yi Guchen and smiled evilly. Sheng Guanyin did not say a word. Instead, she looked at Yi Guchen with great interest. She knew a little about Yi Guchen's true strength. She was also very curious about how Yi Guchen would deal with the current situation. Amitabha. This female benefactor's chest is not bad, but her heart is too weak. Kong Kong clasped her hands together and chanted the name of Buddha. She shook her head regretfully. This kind of appearance was somewhat amusing. What did you say? Yu Shuangyan's face was even colder. A little monk dared to blaspheme her like this? Yi Guchen's face was calm. He raised his eyelids. Yu Shuangyan wanted to use this method to deal with him. Brother, my Hua family will compensate you. Please take action to lure away those thunder spirits. Hua Xingjie said calmly. Although his tone was calm, the toughness in it was obvious. Please do it. Yin Wufeng's face was cold. In his eyes, Yi Guchen and Kong Kong did not have the courage to go against the elites of the aristocratic families. Yu Shuangyan's lips curled into a cold smile. Indeed, she might not be able to deal with Yi Guchen personally. But so what? She had plenty of ways to deal with Yi Guchen. On the other side, Gui Jianchou Yin Chou, and the others frowned slightly but did not act rashly. After all, they were strangers to Yi Guchen. Yin Chou had only seen Yi Guchen once at the Tianfeng banquet. There was no friendship between them. Are you sure you want to attack me? Yi Guchen turned his head and glanced coldly at Hua Xingjie and the others. Chapter 901. Yi Guchen believed in the principle of not offending others if they didn't offend him first. However, if someone didn't know what was good for them and tried to provoke him, Yi Guchen wouldn't show any mercy. Yu Yuan Kuei, Zi Yuexin, Huang Feiyun, and the others were examples of this. Oh, you mean we can't attack you? Before Hua Xingjie could say anything, Yin Wufeng tilted his head and a wicked glint flashed in his eyes. The Yin family was also a powerful family in the Sword Dao Alliance. They had a false sage and were not weaker than the Hua family, Jiang family, and Shengguan family. Although Yin Wufeng wasn't the most outstanding prodigy in the Yin family, his talent and strength weren't weak either. In the Sword Dynasty, there weren't many people that Yin Wufeng didn't dare to provoke. You can attack me, but you'll have to bear the consequences. Yi Guchen's tone was equally flat. His attitude surprised Gui Jianchou, Yin Chou, and the others. After all, not everyone had the guts to talk to Hua Xingjie and Yin Wufeng with such an attitude. Alright, I'd like to see what the consequences of provoking you are. Yin Wufeng's figure flashed as he charged directly at Yi Guchen. There was no time to delay. Yin Wufeng wanted to capture Yi Guqin as soon as possible and use him to attract the thunder spirits. This would give them a chance to enter the top floor. It's Yin Wufeng. He actually attacked Dugu Wubai. Yin Wufeng, ranked 23rd on the Sword Dao Alliance sword list. He's second only to Hua Xingjie in this selection. I wonder how that young man provoked Yin Wufeng. Haha, I'm afraid Hua Xingjie and Yin Wufeng want to capture some people as cannon fodder. Otherwise, with the 4 thunder spirits guarding them, how could they reach the top? At the foot of the Thunder Prison Mountain, everyone was watching, including those who had been eliminated and those who had been selected. This is bad. Han Lingxian and the others' hearts clenched. Although Yi Guqin had defeated Yu Shuangyan, Yin Wufeng was stronger than Yu Shuangyan. On the other side, the people from the 5 great academies also noticed the battle in the sky. The Yin family really knows how to pick opponents. Do you want to use others as cannon fodder? Beixian elder from Sacred Cliff College sneered. At Long River College, an elder from the Yin family said indifferently, "The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. Moreover, he's just a trash with a cultivation level of stage 3. So what if he reaches the top?" Elder Ainli is right. My Tensei College will never accept such a person. If Sacred Cliff College wants him, then he will belong to your Sacred Cliff College, Elder Hua Emo said indifferently. Oh, are you sure? Beixian elder's eyes lit up. Although the others looked down on Yi Guqin's stage 3 strength, Beixian elder felt that Yi Guqin was not that simple. Being able to reach the top with a cultivation level of stage 3 didn't mean that his cultivation level was weak, but it showed his potential. Of course. My Tensei College only accepts monsters such as Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng and that sword demon, Elder Hua Emo said indifferently. Behind Elder Hua Emo, Hua Tingfei's eyes fell on Yi Guqin, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Although Yi Guqin's face had changed, Hua Tingfei still felt a trace of familiarity with his figure. On the Tianxian College's ship, Mu Xingzu's dim almond eyes suddenly focused when she inadvertently glanced at Yi Guqin. A trace of familiarity. Mu Xingzu's delicate body suddenly trembled, and her eyes focused. Jiang Fengmian, who was standing beside her, saw Mu Xingzu's strange expression, and also secretly observed. At the top of the Thunder Prison Mountain, a great battle broke out. Yin Wufeng flicked his finger, and his vigorous true energy turned into streaks of sword radiance, which swept out. Yi Guqin also flicked his finger, and used the 6-pulse divine sword. His true energy was compressed in his meridians, and it turned into streaks of sword radiance that shot out. Boom, boom, boom. The streaks of sword radiance burst out, and the surrounding thunder tide collapsed. Yin Wufeng's lips curled into an evil smile, and he blasted his palm toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin drew his sword, and stabbed it toward Yin Wufeng's palm. Yin Wufeng directly grabbed the edge of Yi Guqin's sword with one hand. The surrounding sky prides focused their gazes. Yin Wufeng actually wanted to grab Yi Guqin's sword with his bare hand. Clang. However, when Yin Wufeng's palm grabbed Yi Guqin's sword, the sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks burst out, and the air shook. Swoosh. A streak of sword radiance suddenly shot out from Yin Wufeng's palm, and it flew toward Yi Guqin's face. This scene was extremely sudden, and it was beyond many people's expectations. It's the Yin family's unique skill, the sword in palm. Gue Jiancho said in a serious tone. The sword in palm was the Yin family's unique skill. The sword was hidden in the palm, and the speed of the attack was extremely fast, and it could catch the opponent off guard. You should be able to finish him off with one move. Hua Xingjie shook his head and smiled. In his opinion, Yi Guqin's resistance was laughable. Han Lingxian and the others who were watching the battle could not help but feel their hearts skip a beat, and they almost cried out involuntarily. Seeing this, Yi Guqin directly stretched out his other hand, and directly grabbed the sword in palm that was thrusting toward him. Fool! Do you think your hand is a divine weapon? Yin Wufeng raised his eyebrows and looked at him coldly. Just when he thought Yi Guqin's hand would be cut off in the next moment, clang! The crisp sound of metal colliding was heard, and greenish gold light flowed out from Yi Guqin's palm. He directly grabbed the sword in palm with his bare hands, and then viciously crushed it. Yi Guqin had a 2-star ancient god physical body, flawless body of Vajra, and a perfect physical body. His current physical body was already extremely strong, and it was not difficult for him to crush an ordinary divine weapon with his bare hands. At the same time that he crushed the sword in palm, Yi Guqin infused his vital energy into the blade, and it shook violently, shaking off Yin Wufeng's grip on his hand. He flipped his hand and executed the immortal murdering sword technique at Yin Wufeng. Boom! Yin Wufeng's figure suddenly retreated, and he stared at Yi Guqin with great surprise. What a strong physical body! The other Sky Prides were also surprised. Yi Guqin's physical body was too strong. Even Hua Xingjie raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not care about Yi Guqin's vital energy cultivation, but his physical body was surprising. In the sky, on the ship of Tensei College, Hua Tingfei looked at Yi Guqin with suspicion. The scene of Yi Guqin crushing the sword in palm reminded him of the time when his sword was crushed by Dugu Wubai in the Qian dynasty. It was too similar. No way. Hua Tingfei could not believe it. After all, Yi Guqin had not recovered his vital energy cultivation at that time. From a cripple without vital energy to a level 3 spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Hua Tingfei could not believe it, but he still paid attention. You do have some physical strength, but that is not a reason for you to be arrogant. Yin Wufeng was serious, and the aura of a level 9 spirit bridge of heaven and earth completely erupted. What he wanted was to end the battle as quickly as possible. Otherwise, he would consume a lot of energy under the impact of the lightning tide. 9 Hell Sword. Yin Wufeng drew his sword, and a pitch-black sword energy that was dozens of feet long slashed at Yi Guqin. Chapter 902. Yi Guqin's physical body had indeed exceeded Yin Wufeng's expectations. However, in the Sword Dynasty, physical cultivators were not worthy of the spotlight. Cultivation level and swordsmanship were the basis of measuring a prodigy's strength. Yin Wufeng immediately unleashed his signature technique, the 9 Darkness Sword. The pitch-black sword radiance carried a destructive aura as it shot toward Yi Guqin. Even the surrounding lightning waves were parted. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed when he saw the ferocious sword technique. Yi Guqin pointed his sword at the sky. True energy burst out, forming a whirlwind that spread out. A dazzling silver sword radiance broke through the hole, as if it could sweep through the 9 heavens and the galaxy. It was the first move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, the star-shattering sword. Boom! The silver sword radiance and the pitch-black sword energy collided. They wore each other down, causing ripples to appear. The 3 ultimate holy swords. Han Lingxian, who was watching from the sidelines, muttered. Her eyes were dazed. The 3 ultimate holy swords of the Han family had actually unleashed such power in the hands of an outsider. Of course, Han Lingxian was not jealous. She was just happy for Yi Guqin. Bang! After the collision, both of their figures retreated. Yin Wufeng's expression was completely frozen. His gaze was fixed on Yi Guqin. If it was before, he would not have taken Yi Guqin seriously. But now, Yin Wufeng had unleashed his full strength. Yet he still could not defeat his opponent. What did this mean? Although Yi Guqin's cultivation level was only at stage 3, his true strength was comparable to stage 9 prodigies like them. I don't believe it. Yin Wufeng's expression was as solemn as water. How could he be willing to fight to a draw with a nameless nobody? 9 heavenly fiend swords. Yin Wufeng changed his sword technique again, and unleashed the Yin family's emperor-level sword technique. The 9 heavenly fiend swords had a total of 9 moves. Each move was stronger than the previous one. If the 9 moves were combined and superimposed, it would be even more powerful. Boom! Yin Wufeng directly displayed the first sword. Yi Guqin still used the star-breaking sword to block the attack. Then the second and third sword strikes followed. Streaks of sword aura with dense killing intent swept out, slashing towards Yi Guqin. However, they were all blocked by Yi Guqin. Yin Wufeng slashed out 9 times in a row, but they were all blocked by Yi Guqin. How is this possible? The surrounding Sky Prides were all dumbfounded. This brat really has some skills. Shangguan Yan's small mouth was also agape, as if she had fallen into a dream. She was now rejoicing. Although she and Yi Guqin had a small conflict before, it was fortunate that they didn't fight. Why? He actually has such strength. Yu Shuangyan could no longer remain calm. Yi Guchen's performance had far exceeded her expectations. Yin Wufeng's strength was even stronger than hers. Yu Shuangyan realized that in her heart, there was a rare trace of regret. She regretted provoking Yi Guchen because of Yu Yuankue. Hua Xingjia's gaze froze. There was no longer any contempt on his face. Being able to contend with Yin Wufeng had already proven Yi Guchen's strength. Dugu Wubai from Tianfeng Ridge can actually contend with Yin Wufeng. In that case, he really has the strength to be in the top 30 of the sword roll. Seeing the battle on the Thunder Prison Mountain, some of the spectating lords were surprised. Although the sky prides on the sword roll changed frequently, the top 30 sky prides rarely changed. As for Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others, they had already gotten used to Yi Guchen's surprises. Sister Lingxian, you were right. Young Master Dugu is really a person who can create miracles, Qin Paisai murmured. Young Master Dugu's crisis is not over yet. Han Lingxian was still worried. Although Yi Guchen could contend with Yin Wufeng, there was still Yu Shuangyan, Hua Xingjie, and the others at the side. How is this possible? How can you resist my sword move? 9 swords in one, Sky Demon Void Shattering Sword. Yin Wufeng shouted loudly. True Qi surged as he slashed out 9 swords in succession. Then, the 9 swords overlapped and burst out in even more terrifying sword Qi, slashing down on Yi Guchen's head. Yi Guchen activated his true Qi, and the sword blade vibrated violently. He raised his sword vertically, and the tip of the sword drew an arc of light, like a lonely crescent moon. That magnificent and deep crescent sword light collided with Yin Wufeng's move. This was the second move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, Earth Moon Absolute Sword. Rumble. It was as if countless thunderbolts had exploded. Cracks appeared on the incomparably hard mountain that had been struck by lightning, and the mountain rocks were shattered. Under everyone's gazes, the Blue Moon Sword arc directly broke apart Yin Wufeng's sword move, and carried the remaining momentum as it fell towards Yin Wufeng. Yin Wufeng's complexion abruptly changed as he hastily raised his sword to block the attack. However, the impact of the attack caused him to cough up blood repeatedly as his figure flew backwards like a kite with its string cut. Following that, the impact of the lightning tide had charred his body black, and he had suffered heavy injuries. Yin Wufeng, ranked 23rd on the sword ranking, had been defeated. He was defeated by a dark horse. On the ship of Long River College, Elder Yin Li, who had just said that the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit, now had an extremely gloomy expression on his face. Yin Wufeng was the genius of their Yin family, but now he had been defeated by a dark horse in such a manner. This was really a disgrace to the Yin family. However, the people of the college were not allowed to interfere with the selection of the 5 academies. This was a rule that no one could violate. Even if Yin Li was unhappy, he could not interfere at this moment. Elder Hua Mo's expression was also slightly embarrassed. After all, he had looked down on Yi Guchen before, and even said that he would never accept Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen had defeated Yin Wufeng in the blink of an eye, which made him feel as if he had been slapped in the face. Haha, it would be impolite for Sacred Cliff College to reject such a good seedling. Bei Xian Elder was overjoyed when he saw this scene. In the past, Sacred Cliff College had always picked up the leftovers of other colleges. Those geniuses with real talent and potential were not very willing to join Sacred Cliff College. However, Bei Xian Elder was happy that Elder Hua Mo had personally pushed a genius who was comparable to the top 30 on the sword ranking to Sacred Cliff College. It's just the top 30 on the sword ranking. Our Tensei College has no shortage of geniuses. We can just accept the sword demon when the time comes. Elder Hua Mo said coldly. The smile on Bei Xian Elder's face disappeared when he heard this. With the talent that the sword demon had shown, it was possible that he would look down on Sacred Cliff College. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yin Wufeng's body was charred black, and the corners of his mouth and chin were covered in blood. He stared at Yi Guchen with an extremely cold gaze. Who are you? Yin Wufeng's expression was cold and stern. At the same time, he had some guesses in his heart. I didn't expect that we had misjudged you. You are not a nobody. Hua Xingjie also felt that something was wrong. If they still did not suspect Yi Guqin's identity at this time, they would be too stupid. Could it be? Yu Shuangyan also thought of something at the same time. Not only them, but the geniuses, lords, and people from the aristocratic families who were watching the battle from the sidelines also reacted. I remember that Dugu Wubai seems to be from Tianfeng Ridge. You mean? Some of the lords' expressions suddenly froze. An unprecedented shock appeared in their eyes. It can't be. Many people's expressions were dull. At this moment, everyone, whether it was the people on the Thunder Prison Mountain, the spectators on the sidelines, or even the people from the 5 major academies in the sky, focused their attention on Yi Guqin. He had become the focus of everyone's attention at this moment. He felt that countless gazes were directed at him, as if they wanted to penetrate his body. Yi Guqin's lips curved into a faint smile. At this point, there was no need to hide anything. A terrifying wave of true qi, accompanied by a strong sword essence, burst out from Yi Guqin's body and swept in all directions, engulfing the sky. He no longer held back and truly released his own strength. I am the sword demon Dugu Wubai. Chapter 903. His cold voice was like a clap of thunder, exploding in all directions on the Thunder Prison Mountain. Everyone's mind was buzzing, as if they had been shocked silly. Yi Guqin looked at the sky disdainfully, his black hair fluttering in the wind. Vigorous true energy and sword intent exploded, forming a biting cold storm around him that swept in all directions. Sword Demon. It was a name that shocked everyone. In the Skywind Ridge, he had broken the sword techniques of many prodigies on the sword ranking, including Hua Wuxia's sword technique. In the first round of the 5 Academy selection, he had defeated the top 3 on the sword ranking, Purple, Jian Jinghong, and Hua Wuxia. 3 lights illuminated the world, illuminating the Sword Dynasty. The Sword Demon was like a peerless genius in the Sword Dao, rising in the Sword Dynasty. Many people were guessing who the Sword Demon was. But now, after Yi Guqin admitted his identity, they were all stunned. Everyone's mind was in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. They never thought that the Sword Demon would be the one with the lowest cultivation base among these prodigies. Qin Zhen, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others had already guessed Yi Guqin's identity. Now that they heard Yi Guqin admit it, they couldn't calm down. He really is. Qin Zhen took a deep breath, glad that he had made the right choice. I was still looking for the Sword Demon at the Skywind banquet, but I didn't recognize him. Zhuo Qiuqing's voice was trembling. She remembered that she had wanted to compete with the Sword Demon at the Skywind banquet. Now that she thought about it, she had overestimated herself. Young Master Dugu, is this your true confidence? Han Lingxian was completely dazed, as if she had fallen into a dream. She finally understood why Yi Guqin always looked aloof in the Outcloud dynasty. Why did he not take Shen Mubai, Hua Tingfei, and the others seriously? Why would a lion care about ants at its feet? He's the Sword Demon? The corners of Purple Smoke Lord and Yellow Dragon Lord's eyes twitched. They knew that if that was really the case, they would no longer have the chance to take revenge. The eyes of the other lords and members of the aristocratic families were also filled with shock as they looked at the peerless figure on the Lightning Prison Mountain. At the same time, the people of the 5 great academies in the sky could not hide their shock. They had been paying attention to Sword Demon for a long time. After all, the Sword Demon had caused a huge commotion in the first stage. Suppressing the top 3 of the sword ranking was unprecedented in the Sword Dynasty. The 5 great academies all wanted to recruit such a peerless genius. However, no one expected that the Sword Demon was actually Yi Guqin. This. Elder Hua Mo's expression was completely dumbstruck, and he was unable to speak for a long time. To think that he had just said that he didn't mind giving Yi Guqin to Sacred Cliff College because he didn't care. As a result, Elder Hua Mo's expression was extremely unsightly. Behind him, Hua Tingfei's expression was also extremely stunned. His eyes were filled with bone-deep coldness and hatred. It's really him. Hua Tingfei was so angry that his body was trembling. Ha! Bei Xian Elder looked up to the sky and laughed. Hua Mo actually personally pushed the monstrous Sword Demon to the Divine Cliff Academy. Sacred Cliff College had never received such a great bargain. On the other side, on the ship of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu's delicate body couldn't help but tremble. She covered her mouth with both hands, and tears almost uncontrollably rolled down from her moist eyes. She really couldn't hold back her tears. Could it be, it's really? Mu Xingzu's heart trembled. This was because she also knew that Yi Guqin had once used the alias Dugu Wubai. At this moment, Mu Xingzu didn't even dare to go forward to confirm. She was afraid that what she saw was just an illusion. She was afraid that the Dugu Wubai was not the figure in her heart. Xingzhu, what's wrong? Ying Lang was shocked when she saw Mu Xingzu suddenly cry. Jiang Fengmian's eyes were deep. He glanced at Mu Xingzu, then looked at Yi Guqin on the Thunder Prison Mountain. What's going on? Jiang Fengmian was puzzled. What kind of existence was the sword demon, Dugu Wubai, to be able to make Mu Xingzu lose her composure like this? On the Thunder Prison Mountain, all the prodigies fell into a momentary daze. This was because this news was simply too unbelievable. You're the sword demon? Hua Xingjie was extremely shocked. He never imagined that Yi Guqin was the sword demon who had broken Hua Wuxia's sword technique and caused the 3 heavenly gates to tremble. Yu Shuangyan could no longer maintain the indifference on her face. Although she previously thought that Yi Guqin was difficult to deal with, she did not think that he was the sword demon. What was even more unacceptable to her was that the person she despised and looked down on the most, Yi Guqin, was actually the person who had suppressed Hua Wuxia. Hua Wuxia was Yu Shuangyan's target. This sudden turn of events caused Yu Shuangyan to feel dizzy. She could not accept it. He's the sword demon. He hid it really well. Yen Choku was shocked, and he could not help but laugh bitterly. He had met Yi Guqin before at the Heavenly Wind banquet. Unfortunately, Yi Guqin had not recovered his cultivation level at that time, so Yen Choku did not pay much attention to it. If that's the case, I'll have to ask the sword demon for advice in the future. Yen Choku thought to himself. You're really the sword demon? Yin Wufeng's face was tense, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. If he had known that Yi Guqin was the sword demon, he definitely would not have attacked him. So, do you still want to attack me? Yi Guqin stood with his hands behind his back, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. Even Hua Xingjie's face was extremely serious. Yi Guqin was the sword demon, and he had defeated Yin Wufeng previously. Now even Hua Xingjie did not dare to underestimate Yi Guqin. Big brother Dugu is so powerful. Kong Kong could not help but exclaim when he saw this. Yi Guqin's words silenced all the prodigies. They no longer had their previous arrogance. That's great. I also want to see how powerful the sword demon is, since he can counter Big Brother's sword technique, Hua Xingjie said in a serious tone. In front of so many people, if he were to shrink back, the Hua clan's face and his own face would be completely lost. Moreover, although Yi Guqin had shocked the 3 great heavenly gates, that was only a test. No one knew how strong he really was. Hua Xingjie could only pray in his heart that Yi Guqin's strength would not be too heaven-defying. Heavenly Sword of Supremacy. Hua Xingjie did not hesitate at all, and attacked directly. Holding the long sword in his hand, the sword edge swallowed and spat out a sharp sword light, and it slashed towards Yi Guqin. Hua Xingjie has attacked. Exclamations rose and fell one after another. If Yi Guqin, the dark horse, was excluded, the recognized first place in this 5 academies selection was undoubtedly Hua Xingjie, who was ranked 19th on the sword list. However, Yi Guqin had caused too much of a commotion in the first round. Even if it was just a test, he could suppress the top 3 on the sword list, which shocked everyone. All eyes were fixed on him. Everyone's eyes were fixed. They all wanted to know who this sword demon was, who was able to trigger 3 brilliant lights. What was his true strength? Chapter 904. Yi Guqin's eyes were indifferent when he saw Hua Xingjie attack. Even if Hua Xingjie had a cultivation at the peak of the 9th phase, as long as he didn't step into the divine dwelling stage, he wouldn't be a threat to him. Given Yi Guqin's current strength, he could even wrestle with someone of the divine dwelling stage, let alone someone at the peak of the 9th phase. Hua Xingjie's sword was like a heavenly sword as it slashed down at Yi Guqin. The wave of energy was extremely strong, and it was even fiercer and more intimidating than Yin Wufeng's. Seeing Hua Xingjia's imposing manner, all the spectators nodded inwardly. He was indeed worthy of being the strongest heaven pride in the Hua family, with the exception of Hua Wuxia. One could tell how strong or weak he was as soon as he attacked. In the face of Hua Xingjia's sword attack, Yi Guchen took a step forward and held his sword horizontally to block. Ear-piercing clangs erupted as metal clashed, shaking the surroundings. Violent ripples of sword energy swept through the surroundings, shaking off the lightning tide. He blocked it. The gazes of countless spectators froze. Yi Guchen had easily blocked Hua Xingjia's sword attack. Hua Xingjia's eyes were also filled with extreme surprise. He knew that Yi Guchen's strength was extraordinary, but he didn't expect his sword attack to be so easily blocked. Yi Guchen's eyes were as sharp as a sword. Blood-colored sword qi gushed out, transforming into countless red spider lilies that pierced towards Hua Xingjia. God-slaying sword art, Permitha. When she saw the sword appear, Mu Xingzhu's delicate body trembled violently. Her eyes, which were already filled with tears, were filled with countless memories. She couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Xingzhu, what's wrong? Yingling was even more surprised when she saw this. It was the first time she had seen Mu Xingzhu lose her composure. No, it's nothing. Xingzhu is just too happy. Mu Xingzhu choked up. Although she really wanted to reunite with Yi Guchen, the selection was not over yet. Mu Xingzhu could only suppress the longing in her heart and follow the figure closely. Rumble. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, the battle continued. Their swords clashed, and the sound of collisions rang out incessantly. Why? He's only at stage 3. How can he be so strong? Hua Xingjia was puzzled. Naturally, he did not know that the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra that Yi Guchen cultivated was such a heaven-defying technique. Illusory sword technique. Hua Xingjia changed the direction of his sword, and once again displayed one of the Hua family's emperor-level sword arts. His sword shadows alternated between real and illusory, transforming into a sword tide that swept toward Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen opened his palms and curled his fingers, turning the long sword in his hand. His left hand displayed the god-slaying sword technique, and countless blood-red sword rays surged out. His right hand displayed the immortal slaying sword technique, and the scene of a group of immortals falling appeared. Then Yi Guchen put his palms together, and the long sword burst out a trembling sound that shook the sky. God-slaying sword. Immortal slaying sword. Immortal God's cry. After breaking through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, Yi Guchen displayed the immortal God's cry again, and its power was obviously stronger than before. Moreover, the scene of immortal God's cry that appeared was more complicated, causing one's heart to tremble. With a sweep of the sword, heaven and earth mourned. The sword tide formed by Hua Xingjia was directly split into 2. The sword rays did not diminish, and roared toward Hua Xingjia. Komyo Kendo, Radiant Sword Realm. Seeing this, Hua Xingjia's expression changed abruptly. He no longer dared to hold back, and displayed his sword Dao. Although Komyo Kendo was an ordinary sword Dao, it was the peak of ordinary sword Dao, and its power was not inferior to that of an ordinary sword Dao. Moreover, if Komyo Kendo was combined with the dark sword Dao, its power could reach the peak of sword Dao, close to the creation sword Dao. Of course, Hua Xingjia was not like Hua Wuxia, who had the sacred light and darkness physique and had 2 sword Daos. Even so, a single Komyo Kendo was not weak. At this moment, Hua Xingjia displayed Komyo Kendo's sword domain, the Radiant Sword Realm. Endless light spread out from his body, as if forming a radiant boundary. The immortal God's cry slashed directly into the Radiant Sword Realm, bursting forth with a violent collision. Within the Radiant Sword Realm, golden light swords appeared one after another, counteracting the power of the immortal God's cry. However, even so, Hua Xingjia kept retreating, his chest trembling violently, and a bloody taste welled up in his throat. He was injured by the immortal God's cry. How could it be? Hua Xingjia gritted his teeth, and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He had been looking for the sword demon previously, and had even said that if he appeared he would immediately suppress and subdue him. However, now facing Yi Guchen, Hua Xingjia felt so powerless. On the Tensei College ship, Hua Mo's expression froze when he saw this. Not only did Yi Guchen break Hua Wuxiao's sword move, but he also suppressed Hua Wuxiao in the heavenly gate, and now Hua Xingjie was injured. Wasn't Yi Guchen stepping on the pride of the Hua family to rise to the top? Thinking of this, Hua Mo's expression became gloomy. If this Dugu Wubai knows what's good for him, then it's fine, but if he doesn't? Hua Mo muttered to himself. I don't believe it. I'm the genius of the Hua family, second only to my eldest brother Hua Wuxiao. I can't possibly lose. Hua Xingjie's aura burst out again, rising steadily. Radiant Sword Realm, 10,000 light illumination. In the golden radiant sword realm, 10,000 golden light swords instantly condensed, and each light sword was enough to easily penetrate an ordinary heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. At this moment, the 10,000 swords were like billions of rays of light, spreading toward Yi Guchen in an overwhelming manner. Yi Guchen's eyes became serious. At this moment, his best countermeasure was the sword sect's secret technique, the 108,000 sword souls. However, this move was too conspicuous, and would easily cause people to suspect Yi Guchen's identity. Fortunately, other than this, Yi Guchen still had a countermeasure. Yi Guchen's sword momentum changed, and vigorous genuine qi burst out. A sword light as bright as the sun rose from the sword blade. Could that be? Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, Han Lingxian covered her mouth with her jade-like hand, and her beautiful eyes couldn't help but widen. The move that Yi Guchen was about to use shocked her. 3 ultimate holy swords, absolute sword of Qianyang. Yi Guchen pointed his sword to the sky, and the sword light rose like the sun, releasing endless sword light waves. This move was the third move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, absolute sword of Qianyang, absolute sword of Qianyang, absolute sword of Kuanyu, and absolute sword of broken stars. They represented the sun, moon, and stars respectively. This was the essence of the 3 ultimate holy swords. Absolute sword of Qianyang was undoubtedly the most overbearing move among the 3 moves. The sword light was vast and blazing like the sun, and it was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Rumble! Yi Guchen swept out with his sword, and it was as if the sun had exploded. It set off a blazing wave, and it collided with Hua Xingjie's realm move. Boom! Intense light filled that part of the world. Everyone squinted their eyes to watch. In the endless light, the sound of someone vomiting blood could be heard. A figure flew out like a kite with a broken string, and he vomited a large mouthful of blood. His chest was charred black, and there were sword wounds all around him. The person who was sent flying was Hua Xingjie. Hua Xingjie has lost. At this moment, everyone around the Thunder Prison Mountain was silent. Hua Xingjie, who was ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard, had lost to the sword demon. Chapter 905. Looking at Hua Xingjie, who had been beaten back by Yi Guchen, and was coughing up blood from the corner of his mouth, everyone in the surrounding area fell silent. Hua Xingjie, ranked 19th on the sword ranking, was definitely not a nobody. It could be said that Hua Xingjie was almost qualified to challenge for the position of Sword Sun. However, such a heaven's pride, who was second only to Hua Wuxiao in the Hua family, had been defeated by Yi Guchen, who had appeared out of nowhere. This caused many people's hearts to beat wildly. It seems that another dark horse has appeared in the Sword Dynasty. This time, the competition for the position of Sword Sun will be interesting. Many people thought to themselves. The Sword Dynasty had gathered heaven's prides from all over the world, and there had been no lack of dark horses in the past. However, there were only a few heaven's prides like Yi Guchen, who had appeared out of nowhere and stunned everyone. Last time, the sword monk Xuanlian had appeared and defeated many heaven's prides in the top 10 of the sword ranking, which led to his 4th place. Could this sword demon Dugu Wubai be another sword monk Xuanlian? Some people's eyes were filled with anticipation. No, I don't believe it. Dugu Wubai, how could I lose to you? Hua Xingjie's eyes were bloodshot. This time, the 5 academies selection should have been his time to shine. However, all of his glory had been taken away by Yi Guchen. 6 Sun Sword Technique. Hua Xingjie's aura of the 9th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth burst out completely. 6 vigorous and blazing golden sword lights soared up from the radiant sword realm, turning into 6 giant swords. Supported by the emperor-level sword technique, Komio Kendo's power fluctuated in all directions, causing the wind and clouds to change color. Hua Xingjie is really going all out in this attack. All the lords, people from the aristocratic families, and even those from the 5 academies were watching intently. Han Lingshuan's heart tightened. Although she had absolute confidence in Yi Guqin, the fluctuations of Hua Xingjie's sword were too intense. I don't believe that this move can't kill you. Yu Shuangyan's expression was cold. The enmity between her and Yi Guqin was already difficult to resolve, so at this moment, she naturally hoped that Yi Guqin would be defeated, or even killed by Hua Xingjie. Yin Wufeng and the others were also watching. Sword Demon, show me what you're really capable of. Yan Chouke's eyes were filled with anticipation. At this moment, everyone had different thoughts. On the other hand, Yi Guqin's eyes were as calm as a lake. The thick color of blood swallowed his eyes. The blood-red sword chi wrapped around the sword, and the sword edge vibrated and vibrated in the void. Azura Tribulation Life Fall. Yi Guqin swung his sword, and a tragic sword intent of millions of corpses and rivers of blood spread out. In an instant, the sky and earth seemed to be dyed with a layer of blood. The Azura sword principle combined with the 10,000 god tribulation, life fall. The power of this move shocked everyone in the Sword Dynasty. What a terrifying murderous aura. The attack power of this move is shocking. What kind of heaven-defying sword technique is this? I have never seen it before. The crowd was in an uproar. After all, the Sword Dynasty and the Saint Origin Dynasty were far apart. Many people had only heard of Yi Guqin's name and deeds. Some of his moves were not known to everyone. Therefore, Yi Guqin did not have too many scruples. Other than some of the more eye-catching sword sect's secret techniques, Yi Guqin could use the rest of his moves without worry. Boom! Yi Guqin's life fall collided with Hua Xingjie's 6 giant golden light swords. Rumble! One after another, the light swords were shattered by Yi Guqin's sword. The sword light that poured out overturned the ground and shattered countless rocks. Both sides were shaken and were forced to retreat. Hua Xingjie vomited blood again. A terrifying sword wound appeared on his chest, and blood dripped down. Obviously, he was severely injured. Yi Guqin was forced to retreat as well. He groaned in his chest, and a trail of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Hua Xingjie's strength was not weak. The 6-yang sword art had also injured Yi Guqin, causing some sword wounds to appear on his body. However, compared to Hua Xingjie, he was much better. He still lost. Looking at the battle that had been settled, many people were shocked. The people from the 5 great academies in the sky were also in an uproar. This sword demon is interesting. Jiang Fengnian played with a red maple leaf in his hand with a deep look in his eyes. He then looked at Mu Xingzu and realized that Mu Xingzu's gaze had never left Yi Guqin. This made Jiang Fengnian frown slightly. On the lightning prison mountain, Hua Xingjie kept coughing up blood. The surrounding lightning waves surged and surrounded him again, making his situation even worse. I lost. I can't believe I lost. Hua Xingjie was still in disbelief. This was like a nightmare to him. Everyone, let's attack together. If this person is here, will we still have a chance to perform? Yu Shuangyan shouted coldly. She wanted to gather everyone's strength to deal with Yi Guqin. That's right. Everyone, let's attack together. If we don't get rid of this person, we are destined to be suppressed, Yin Wufeng said. Many prodigies turned to look at Yi Guqin with cold eyes. Yi Guqin's performance had seriously threatened them. Yi Guqin was also the one who had the highest chance of reaching the top. This has nothing to do with us, Gui Jianqiu said. He was an itinerant cultivator, so he naturally wouldn't listen to Yin Wufeng and the others. Don't you think it's shameful to gang up on him? Yan Chouke snorted. The winner is king, and the loser is a bandit, Hua Xingjie said. The true qi in his body surged as he used a secret technique to temporarily suppress his injuries. No matter what, they couldn't let Yi Guqin reach the top. Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and Yu Shuangyan led the way. Among the remaining prodigies, there were also a dozen or so prodigies from the aristocratic families who responded and gradually surrounded Yi Guqin. Shang Guanyan was also a prodigy from an aristocratic family, But she didn't get involved. She vaguely felt that the strength that Yi Guchen had shown was not all that he had. Do you think you can stop me? Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile as he watched the prodigies gradually surround him. Do you need help? Yancho Kuku asked. Thank you. But there's no need for that. They're just a mob. Yi Guchen smiled casually. Everyone's faces froze when they heard Yi Guchen's words. The prodigies ranked 19th, 23rd, and 27th on the sword leaderboard, as well as a dozen or so other powerful prodigies from the aristocratic families. Yi Guchen actually regarded this force as a motley crew when they were put together. Everyone's expressions were very interesting. Hua Xingjie and the others' expressions were extremely dark. Attack! There was no hesitation. The conflict between Yi Guchen and Hua Xingjie and the other prodigies was irreconcilable. They had to fight to determine the victor. Heaven Fiend 9 Swords. 6 Sun Sword Technique. Heaven Ice River Sword. Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan, and the others all unleashed their most powerful sword techniques. The other prodigies also unleashed their techniques. A large number of sword techniques formed a destructive torrent that rushed toward Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen and his sword were like rainbows. His sword chi and sword intent were earth-shattering. He was fighting a group of prodigies alone. Duga's 9 Swords sword-breaking technique. Yi Guchen's long sword slashed out, breaking all techniques with a single slash. A ray of sword light illuminated the sky, tearing apart the torrent of sword energy and breaking all the sword techniques. However, just as the shock in everyone's eyes had yet to fully emerge, the sword in Yi Guchen's hand was unable to withstand the violent collision. Under countless gazes, it exploded into metal shards with a loud crack. The endless destructive sword techniques drowned Yi Guchen's figure. Chapter 906. The sudden turn of events was beyond everyone's expectations. Yi Guchen's sword was broken. A sword was extremely important to a sword cultivator. However, Yi Guchen's sword was purchased at the last minute, so it wasn't a divine weapon. In such a powerful collision, it was unable to withstand the shockwaves and directly shattered, turning into countless metal fragments. Young Master Dugu, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others turned pale with fright. Han Lingxian, in particular, was pale as a sheet, her body trembling. On the other hand, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord were pleasantly surprised. Yi Guchen's death was a pleasant surprise for them. In the sky, many exclamations came from the ships of the 5 academies. Yi Guchen's death was a great loss for the Sword Dynasty. Sword Demon's strength isn't bad, but unfortunately he's too arrogant. Huaimo shook his head. You still have the nerve to say that. It's all because Hua Xingjie and the others were shameless and attacked him together. You're saying that Sword Demon is arrogant and arrogant. Beixian Elder snorted. He should be dead now, right? Behind Huaimo, Hua Tingfei stared fixedly at the center of the collision. His eyes were filled with delight. He and Yi Guchen had a grudge that was difficult to resolve. Mu Xingzhu's eyes were filled with worry. However, she still had confidence in Yi Guchen. In her heart, Yi Guchen was a godlike existence. He had survived the desperate situation of the Tianhuang Plain. What else was impossible? On the lightning prison mountain, the wind and clouds changed. Sword light illuminated the sky and thunder rumbled. Yi Guchen's figure was completely submerged in the destructive sword light. Is he dead? Hua Xingjie, In Wufeng, Yu Shuangyan, and the other sky prides were panting as they focused their gazes. More than 10 sky prides attacked together. Even the top 10 sky prides on the sword ranking couldn't ignore them. Although Yi Guchen had shown great strength before, it was still a little difficult to say that he was in the top 10 of the sword ranking. Just as everyone was holding their breaths, the destructive and terrifying sword tide finally dispersed. Boundless golden light suddenly surged out from within the dust and smoke, and everyone could faintly see a lofty figure standing there like an indestructible god. All the spectators' hearts tightened, and they almost stopped breathing. As the dust dissipated, the figure finally appeared. Yi Guchen's body suddenly grew to 9 feet. 2 star marks flashed between his eyebrows, and endless ancient divine light patterns flowed all over his body. Yi Guqin transformed into a 2-star ancient god. Not only that, but a golden armor formed by ancient god power appeared on the surface of his body. The surface of the armor was branded with countless totem patterns. It gave off a sense of desolation, vastness, and firmness. The golden armor wasn't a real weapon. It was a defensive technique of the ancient god clan, the immovable ancient god king armor. The Heaven Barbarian King had also used this technique during the battle with the chaotic world demonic ape. Although the immovable ancient god king armor wasn't a real defensive tool, its defensive power was greater than that of a supreme-grade defensive armor with mystical patterns. Yi Guqin estimated that with his abilities as a 2-star ancient god, the defensive power of the ancient god immovable king armor was equivalent to that of a quasi-apocalypse divine weapon. Yi Guqin's powerful physical body, coupled with the ancient god immovable king armor, could be said to be able to withstand a blow from a divine dwelling realm expert. Although Hua Xingjie and the others' joint attack was powerful, it was undoubtedly wishful thinking to kill Yi Guqin in his ancient god form. This is impossible. Hua Xingjie and the others widened their eyes. They couldn't hide the shock in their hearts. Yi Guqin had only suffered some injuries, which were far from fatal. How could this be? What kind of technique did Dugu Wubai use? Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. The 100 clans of the various heavens were ancient secrets that few people knew about. The people from the 5 academies in the sky were also in a daze. Yi Guqin's strength was beyond their expectations. He had withstood the attacks of a group of supreme talents by himself. No, I don't believe it. Continue to attack. Hua Xingjie's voice trembled slightly. At the beginning of the 5 academy selection, he was so high-spirited that he even wanted to suppress the sword demon. But now, there was a trace of panic in his eyes. Yin Wufeng's expression changed completely. As for Yu Shuangyan, all of her coldness and arrogance had disappeared. This famous iceberg beauty was now trembling like a quail, her jade-like face incomparably pale. You don't even know who you're facing. Yi Guqin's voice was indifferent. He was like a god of war, his golden light shining in all directions. His words silenced all the heaven prides. While Hua Xingjie and the others were waiting, Yi Guqin's figure suddenly turned into a beam of golden light and sped towards the peak. Is he going to attack the peak? Yi Guqin's action shocked everyone. The peak of the lightning prison mountain was not a place that anyone could reach. But Yi Guqin dared to do so. He stretched out his hand, and his ancient god power surged. It transformed into a golden seal that ruthlessly bombarded the lightning curtain. Roar! At the same time, the 4 lightning spirits of the divine dwelling stage also reacted and rushed towards Yi Guqin. Oh! You're courting death. Hua Xingjie and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They thought Yi Guqin would take revenge on them, but they didn't expect Yi Guqin to court death. Who could stop for lightning spirits of the divine dwelling stage? Dugu Wubai is too careless. Bei Xian Elder's face was filled with worry. He had long regarded Yi Guqin as a student of Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guqin's face was calm in the face of the 4 lightning spirits. To others, Yi Guqin's action was crazy, ignorant, and overestimating himself. But only Yi Guqin knew that he had the confidence to do so. Break! Yi Guqin let out an angry roar, and the ancient divine royal seal directly broke through the lightning screen. Yi Guqin flashed away. In an instant, endless lightning frantically rushed towards Yi Guqin. The Thunder Prison Mountain Peak attracted lightning from the sky all year round, so the power of the lightning could be imagined. The lightning seemed to have turned into an electric net, wrapping around Yi Guqin. Lightning also burst out from the surface of the golden ancient god immovable king armor. If it were Hua Xingjie and the others, they wouldn't be able to withstand such terrifying lightning. Yi Guqin was confident not only because of the ancient god body and the immovable king armor. It was also because he had the devouring power. Yi Guqin activated the devouring power in his body, turning it into a devouring black hole, absorbing and refining the lightning power that poured into his body. The overbearing devouring power wasn't the slightest bit weaker than the lightning power. Not only that, the thunder tribulation sword that had been silent in the depths of Yi Guqin's body began to tremble again. The trembling of the Thunder Tribulation sword even caused the God Devourer demon sword to tremble slightly, as if it felt threatened. More lightning was sucked into the Thunder Tribulation sword. Yi Guchen's pressure was greatly reduced. His figure flashed, and he directly rushed to the peak. A sword inserted diagonally into the peak attracted the lightning of heaven and earth, and its power was earth-shattering. What is Dugawubai trying to do? Is he trying to pull out the 9-dragon thunder prison? Seeing Yi Guchen's action, everyone's face froze. A horrified expression appeared on everyone's face. Chapter 907. The 9-dragon thunder prison was once a divine weapon, so its power was self-evident. Even if it was damaged and had fallen to a quasi-divine weapon, it was still very powerful. But the 9-dragon thunder prison was not something that anyone could pull out. Even Wuxia, who was ranked 3rd on the sword ranking, had tried to pull out the 9-dragon thunder prison but failed. Because this sword not only controlled lightning, but also merged with the soul of the 9-headed dragon, making it extremely domineering. In the past 5 academies selection, there was no lack of people who wanted to obtain the 9-dragon thunder prison, but without exception, many people could not even break the light curtain. At this moment, everyone was shocked to see Yi Guchen break the lightning light curtain and rush towards the 9-dragon thunder prison. Could Yi Guchen succeed? Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, Qin Zhen, Purple Smoke Lord, Yellow Dragon Lord and others. There were also Hua Xingjia, Yin Wufeng, Yushuang Yan and others, including Huaimo, Hua Tingfei, Beixian Elder, Kong Kong, Mu Xingzu and Yinglang. Everyone held their breaths at this moment, staring intently at the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Would Yi Guchen create a miracle today? Looking at the sword submerged in endless heavenly lightning, Yi Guchen's eyes were full of arrogance and ambition. So what if it was a quasi-divine weapon? Yi Guchen had a real immemorial demon sword in his body. The one who felt lucky now was not Yi Guchen, but the 9-dragon thunder prison. It was the 9-dragon thunder prison's honor to be used by Yi Guchen. Roar! Behind him, the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits chased after him. Yi Guchen's only choice now was to pull out the 9-dragon thunder prison. Only then could he solve the crisis of the 4 lightning spirits. He used so near, yet worlds apart to get close to the 9-dragon thunder prison. Only then did he see the sword clearly. The 9-dragon thunder prison was 5 feet long, and the sword hilt was like a 9-headed dragon coiling around. Because the sword attracted lightning all year round, it was covered with countless natural lightning patterns. There were even 9 flood dragon patterns vaguely visible, emitting a dragon's might. Flood dragon demonic souls were rare enough. The true dragon was almost extinct. Just as Yi Guchen approached the 9-dragon thunder prison, the 9-dragon lightning prison sword suddenly trembled. Soon after, everyone heard 9 ear-piercing roars in succession. 9 Jiao dragon demonic souls appeared. Each of the Jiao dragons was covered in blazing lightning. They looked like 9 thick lightning bolts. Roar! After 9 consecutive roars, the soul of the 9-headed thunder flood dragon charged towards Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen had a strange look in his eyes. No wonder it was once a divine weapon of heavenly tribulation. The 9-dragon thunder prison was actually able to manifest the souls of the 9-headed thunder flood dragons to attack the enemy. However, Yi Guchen showed no fear and continued to charge forward. Boom! There was a violent collision. Yi Guchen activated the ancient god body with all his might, and the golden seal suppressed it. Not only that, the thunder calamity sword and devouring power in his body were also refining the lightning power. Yi Guchen took this opportunity to break through the defense of the 9-headed thunder flood dragon soul, and landed on the sword itself. Yi Guchen held the hilt of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword with one hand. At this moment, Yi Guchen was the center of attention. Everyone held their breaths as they waited. It's impossible for him to pull it out. Even Big Brother can't do it. Hua Xingjia's forehead was covered in sweat unknowingly. The 9-dragon thunder prison is extremely difficult to subdue. Moreover, there will be a backlash. Yushuang Yan prayed in her heart. Countless gazes were focused on Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, was completely focused. He placed his hand on the sword hilt. An even more terrifying lightning power, accompanied by sword intent, rushed into his body. The power of lightning was seven-colored. It was extremely mysterious and powerful. Lightning sword principle and unusual lightning. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed. In the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, there was indeed the comprehension of the lightning sword principle that the lightning sword reverend had left behind. Not only that, but there was also a type of unusual lightning in the sword. Seven-colored dark lightning. It is said to be a lightning formed by 7 different types of unusual lightning. It even has the power to punish on behalf of the heavens. Yi Guchen was shocked and revealed a joyful expression. Seven-colored dark lightning was one of the most powerful types of lightning among the unusual lightning. Even Yi Guchen's purple void lightning, which was a combination of 2 types of unusual lightning, was not comparable to the seven-colored dark lightning. Yi Guchen's body was instantly submerged in the seven-colored dark lightning. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. 7-colored thunderbolts wrapped around Yi Guchen's body, bringing with them a powerful destructive force. 7-colored dark lightning. Can Dugu Wubai withstand it? Everyone's eyes were fixed on it. Han Lingshuan's palms were sweating. She was very nervous for Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's body was being baptized by the destructive power of the lightning. Even the immovable ancient God King armor on Yi Guchen's body showed signs of cracking. From this, one could see how powerful the backlash of the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was. But no one could imagine how many trump cards Yi Guchen had. The Thunder Tribulation sword in his body was constantly absorbing the power of the seven-colored dark lightning and heavenly lightning. Vaguely, there seemed to be words emerging on the sword. Could it be the 4th move of the Thousand-God Tribulation? Yi Guchen was shocked. This was a pleasant surprise. But to fully manifest the 4th move, it was obvious that the current power was not enough. But the most important thing was that Yi Guchen's true qi, after being tempered by endless lightning, was about to reach the 4th stage. Roar. At this time, the 4 divine dwelling stage thunder spirits were less than 3 feet away from Yi Guchen. In the next second, Yi Guchen's body would be torn apart by the 4 thunder spirits. Haha, Dugawubai, you can't defy the heavens. Hua Shengjia's eyes were bloodshot, as if he couldn't wait to see Yi Guchen fall. It's over. Yu Shuangyan's beautiful eyes also showed a trace of relief. This result couldn't be better for them. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai and the others almost stopped breathing. In the sky, Sacred Cliff College's Beixian elder's face was solemn. He really wanted to help. But during the 5 academies selection, no one was allowed to intervene, so he was powerless. Just when everyone thought that the peerless genius of the Sword Dynasty was going to die at the hands of the Thunder Spirit, a voice suddenly sounded. Yi Guchen himself didn't have the slightest bit of fear. He had experienced countless life and death situations, so this little crisis was nothing. Sword rise. Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind as he roared to the sky. The roar shook the heavens for 30,000 miles. If he couldn't even subdue a sword, how could Yi Guchen be called a sword master? How could he be called a sword demon? Boom! True qi erupted from Yi Guchen's body, and the ancient god power surged. At the same time, the Thunder Tribulation sword absorbed the power of thousands of thunderbolts. The God Devourer sword trembled slightly, releasing a trace of the ancient demon sword's power, which was transmitted to the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword trembled in an instant, as if a dragon was facing an ancient true dragon. Not to mention that the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was in a damaged state. Even if it was at its peak, it couldn't resist the pressure of the God Devourer sword. The ancient famed sword came out, and all other swords submitted. Finally, endless thunder and lightning exploded from the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword. Under the gaze of thousands of people, Yi Guchen held the sword hilt and suddenly exerted force. The sword was pulled out inch by inch. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. Then, a sword cry that shook everyone's eardrums resounded between heaven and earth. Boom! The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was completely pulled out by Yi Guchen. The sword demon pulled out the sword, and the lightning tribulation shook the world and illuminated the sky. Chapter 908. Between Heaven and Earth. All sounds seemed to have disappeared. Only the sound of the 9-dragon thunder prison resounded throughout the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The 9-dragon thunder prison, which had been at the peak of the thunder prison mountain for a long time, was completely pulled out by Yi Guchen at this moment. Yi Guchen's long hair danced in the wind, his temperament was wild and disdainful. Even in his eyes, there was thunder and lightning shooting out. When the sword demon pulled out his sword, the lightning tribulation shook the world and illuminated the sky. After the 3 lights illuminated the world, Yi Guchen pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison again, shocking everyone present. How is this possible? Hua Xingjie knelt on the ground with a thud, his eyes were lifeless. As the pride of the Hua family, other than Hua Wuxia, he did not put any other pride in his eyes. He was proud, but this pride was shattered in front of Yi Guchen. So what if he was from the Hua family? So what if he was ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard? In front of Yi Guchen, he was still vulnerable. Yu Shuangyan's mind was also buzzing and trembling. The blood on her face faded, leaving behind a sheet of paper. Only now did she realize that the arrogance and coldness she had towards Yi Guchen before was laughable. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, many lords and aristocratic families who were watching the battle were completely speechless. It seems that I still underestimated young Master Dugu. Han Lingxian smiled bitterly. She remembered that when she first participated in the selection, Yi Guchen once said that he wanted to win the 9-dragon thunder prison. Han Lingxian thought it was a joke. But now, the joke was real. For some reason, Han Lingxian was not too happy. The more outstanding Yi Guchen's performance was, the greater the gap between him and Han Lingxian. In the end, Han Lingxian could only silently look at Yi Guchen's back. In the sky, Beixian Elder's face was flushed with excitement. Yi Guchen's performance was really beyond his expectations. Huaimo was speechless. His face froze. Hua Tingfei's eyes were filled with unprecedented shock. Who would have thought that the young man who had pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison with a shocking sword might was the Dugu Wubai who had been treated as a cripple in the Qiyun dynasty without any qi cultivation. Mu Xingzu was not surprised by Yi Guchen's performance. She shed tears of joy. Jiang Fengmian and Yinglang were shocked. Different people looked at Yi Guchen with different gazes, but there was no doubt that they were all shocked. At this moment, Yi Guchen pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison. 7-colored profound lightning illuminated the sky. He was like the master of the sword, the king of thunder. The moment the 9-dragon thunder prison was pulled out, the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits exploded into balls of lightning and poured into Yi Guchen and the 9-dragon thunder prison. To a certain extent, these lightning spirits were the guardians of the 9-dragon thunder prison. Since Yi Guchen had pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison, there was no need for them to exist. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions sounded one after another on the thunder prison mountain. Lightning spirits exploded one after another, turning into bolts of lightning and gathering at the top of the mountain. Half of the lightning was absorbed by the 9-dragon thunder prison. The other half poured into Yi Guchen's body. Yi Guchen's aura soared again. Under the envious gazes of many heaven prides, Yi Guchen directly broke through to the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Boom! In Yi Guchen's Qi, another section of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge was formed. Yi Guchen had officially stepped into the 4th level, and his aura was even more powerful. He looked disdainfully at the pale-faced Hua Xingjie and the others, and the corners of his lips curved in an icy smile. Seeing Yi Guchen's sneer, Hua Xingjie and the others felt as if their hearts had fallen into an ice cave. You have to pay the price for doing something wrong, right? Yi Guchen's tone was cold. Although it was impossible for him to kill Hua Xingjie and the others in front of everyone, but it was still possible to teach them an unforgettable lesson. Dugu Wubai, how dare you? Hua Xingjie shouted, but he could not hide the trembling and panic in his voice. Everyone knew that Hua Xingjie was tough on the outside but weak on the inside. Yi Guchen did not hesitate and directly attacked. He also wanted to experience the power of a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Previously in the Tianhuang Plains, Yi Guchen had seen Gu Xiaoyang's quasi-tribulation divine weapon, the 7-star illusionary god, and its power had left a deep impression on him. Now that Yi Guchen also had a quasi-tribulation divine weapon, He naturally needed someone to practice on. Yi Guchen held the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison in his hand and swept out with his sword. He did not use any moves, but the sword itself surged with a large amount of lightning. The moment I pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, I completely controlled this sword, but I haven't refined the 7-colored profound thunder in it. Yi Guchen thought to himself. Although he controlled the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, he had not comprehended the 7-colored profound thunder, and the thunder sword will in it. But now was not the time to refine it. Whoosh! The sword radiance spread out along with streaks of lightning. The sound of thunder rumbled and shook the sky. Who could resist the wind and thunder of the sword? Hua Xingjie and the others blocked with their swords, but they did not have the slightest strength to resist. They were beaten back and spat out red blood. Even the supreme-grade divine weapons in their hands could not withstand the ferocious power of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen suppressed Hua Xingjie and more than 10 other geniuses of the aristocratic families. In the sky, Hua Mo's face was extremely gloomy. Hua Xingjie had not only embarrassed himself, but also the Hua family. Just as Hua Mo was about to speak, Beixian Elder said with a fake smile. Elder Hua Mo, you said that no one can interfere with the 5 academies selection. Hearing this, Elder Hua Mo's face froze and his eyes darkened. This time, the Hua family had lost all face. Boom! Yi Guchen attacked with his sword. Every sword radiance was accompanied by blazing lightning. A quasi-tribulation divine weapon is indeed powerful. I haven't used any moves, but my ordinary attacks are comparable to the power of a king-level sword art. Yi Guchen was also slightly shocked. Even a quasi-tribulation divine weapon had such power. What about a real tribulation divine weapon? How powerful would the demon sword devour gods be? At this moment, Yi Guchen suddenly looked forward to the day when he could completely control the demon sword devour gods. Puff! Yi Guchen swung his sword and a series of lightning radiance spread out, directly injuring Hua Xingjie. His body was charred black, and even emitted a burnt smell. Yu Shuangyan in Wufeng, and the others were also very miserable. The rest of the geniuses such as Gui Jianqiu and Yan Chok were not affected. They looked at the miserable Hua Xingjie and the others, and the corners of their eyes twitched slightly. If they were in Yi Guchen's position, they would not be able to resist his attack. Last move. Yi Guchen pointed his sword to the sky and poured all the genuine qi of the 4th stage spiritual bridge of heaven and earth into the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Whoosh! A huge lightning bolt streaked across the sky. Yi Guchen's sword resonated with the heavenly thunder. This was the unique property of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Yi Guchen swung his sword, accompanied by the roar of a dragon. A thunder dragon emerged from the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, bursting with thunderbolts. Endless lightning radiance seemed to form a lightning cage, enveloping Hua Xingjie and the others. This was one of the abilities of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. It formed a 9-headed lightning dragon, and formed a purgatory to attack and imprison the enemy. This was how the name of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison came about. Yi Guchen had only just begun to control the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, and could not fully manifest the 9-Dragon Purgatory. But even if there was only one lightning dragon, its power was extremely strong. The lightning dragon circled and turned into a purgatory, imprisoning Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan in Wufeng, and the others, and bombarding them with lightning. They spat out blood, and their bodies were charred black. No one could resist the power of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. After a round of bombardment, Yi Guchen withdrew the lightning dragon's soul. Looking around, only a charred ground was left. There were also charred bodies lying on the ground, on the verge of death. Gulp! The whole place was dead silent. Only the sound of gulping could be heard from time to time. Chapter 909. At this moment, Hua Xingjie, in Wufeng, Yu Shuangyan and the others were really miserable. Their bodies were burnt black, and it was almost impossible to tell who was who. Their auras were extremely weak, and they were on the verge of death. Although Yi Guchen could not directly kill them, he did not hold back and beat these people until they were on the verge of death. Even if they did not die, they were almost half dead. Brother Dugu is mighty, Kong Kong shouted, looking like an onlooker. The eyes of the rogue prodigies twitched. Hua Xingjie and the others were probably the most miserable existence in the 5 academies selection. Many people's eyes turned to Yi Guqin again, with shock and fear in their eyes. A prodigy not only had extraordinary talent and strength, but also had such a resolute and cold temperament. It was impossible for Yi Guqin not to be famous in the Sword Dynasty. In the sky, the corner of Elder Hua Mo's eyes twitched slightly. However, he could not make things difficult for Yi Guqin. After all, Yi Guqin did not kill them. As Yi Guqin pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison, the thunder tide on the entire thunder prison mountain also disappeared. This famous trial place had completely lost its effect. The shock in many people's hearts had not disappeared. After all, the 9-dragon thunder prison was something that even Hua Wuxiao could not pull out. Was Yi Guqin stronger than Hua Wuxiao? Many people's eyes were filled with surprise. If that was the case, it was a big blow to the reputation of the Hua family. Some people looked up at the Tensei College's ship in the sky. Elder Hua Emo was expressionless, and said loudly, "The 5 academies selection is over." As the word over fell, many people's hearts relaxed. However, more people were still unable to calm down. Obviously, there was a dark horse in the selection of the 5 academies. He triggered 3 brilliant lights and suppressed the top 3 of the sword ranking. He pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison and defeated all the geniuses. Yi Guqin, without a doubt, was the first in this 5 academies selection. He would also be the absolute genius that the 5 academies would strive to compete for. Who is this Dugu Bai? Who knows, there are always a few geniuses in the Sword Dynasty from time to time, but geniuses like Dugu Bai are really rare. As the selection came to an end, there were a lot of discussions around them. Next, it was time to choose the academy. Many people were curious about which academy Yi Guqin would join. However, the next scene, the next moment, the world, once again the world, once again, the world, and everyone. On Goddess Academy's ship, a beautiful figure flashed towards Yi Guqin like a fairy. When Yi Guqin saw who it was, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Previously, his attention was focused on the 9-dragon thunder prison, so he did not pay attention to the people from the 5 great academies in the sky. Therefore, he did not know that Mu Xingzu was among them. At this moment, the selection was over. Mu Xingzu could no longer hold back the overflowing longing in her heart, and rushed towards Yi Guqin. Under the gaze of thousands of people, Mu Xingzu, like a swallow returning to its nest, fiercely threw herself into Yi Guqin's arms. "Master!" Mu Xingzu's voice was trembling with sobs. Only the heavens knew how much despair Mu Xingzu had felt after hearing about the Tianhuang Plains. Yi Guqin was her only salvation. If not for Yi Guqin, she would still be the unknown girl who was bullied by Qin Lin, in the outer courtyard of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. It was Yi Guqin who changed Mu Xingzu's fate. Xingzu. After going through so much, Yi Guqin also sighed in his heart when he saw the familiar figure that he had not seen for a long time. He raised his hand and patted Mu Xingzu's little head. This scene caused the surrounding crowd to stare with their eyes and mouths wide open. Isn't that the proud daughter of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu? She actually called Dugu Wubai master? Could her mysterious master be Dugu Wubai? Is it really master? Many people were shocked and tongue-tied, but there were also people who were puzzled. Was Dugu Wubai really just Mu Xingzu's master? Mu Xingzu's attachment and intimate attitude made it difficult for people not to think about him. This Mu Xingzu is actually young Master Dugu's disciple? Han Lingxian was dazed. At this moment, she finally understood why Yi Guqin's expression changed when he saw Mu Xingzu's name. "My heart is broken." Some young prodigies also heard the sound of their hearts breaking. Mu Xingzu was a proud daughter whose beauty and strength were on par with each other. In addition, she was beautiful and pure. In the Sword Dynasty, she had many followers. TSK, I wonder what Jiang Fengmian and Shangguan Jingxian will think when they see this scene? Many people couldn't help but look at Jiang Fengmian on the ship. Among Mu Xingzu's suitors, there were only 2 people who were thought to have the best chance. One was the 5th on the sword ranking, Jiang Fengmian, a peerless heaven pride of the Jiang clan. He was a modest young master. The other person was the 7th on the sword ranking, Shangguan Jingshan of the Shangguan clan. He was also a top divine-dwelling stage heaven pride whose name resounded throughout the Sword Dynasty. Jiang Fengmian's eyes were deep, and there was a strange look in his eyes. He had pursued Mu Xingzu for a long time, but Mu Xingzu had never spoken to him. Not to mention physical contact, they didn't even speak much. But at this moment, Mu Xingzu threw herself into the arms of a young man in public without any scruples and sobbed. If Yi Guchen was an old man in his 70s or 80s, no one would think much of it. But Yi Guchen was only a few years older than Mu Xingzu. At this moment, he looked more like a couple who had been separated for a long time. It was no wonder that people would think much of it. That Duguwubai is Xingzhu's master? How is that possible? Yinglong's beautiful eyes widened in shock. She glanced at Jiang Fengmian from the corner of her eye. Jiang Fengmian narrowed his eyes slightly, his face expressionless. If it was anyone else, seeing the woman they liked fall into someone else's arms, they would feel uncomfortable in their heart. Xingzhu rejected the dean's offer to take her in as a disciple for Duguwubai. She's really... Yinglang was completely speechless. She had thought that Mu Xingzu's master would be a peerless expert, or at least a top venerable stage existence. But who would have thought that he was only a 4th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Even if Duguwubai was talented and powerful, in Yinglong's eyes, he couldn't compare to a single finger of the dean of Tianxian College. TSK, once the dean knows about this, he'll most likely make trouble for Duguwubai, Yinglang thought to herself. When Shangguan Yan saw this scene, she was also slightly stunned. Mu Xingzu's master is actually Duguwubai. If my cousin finds out, he'll probably fight with Duguwubai, Shangguan Yan muttered to herself. The cousin she was talking about was naturally Shangguan Jingshan, who was ranked 7th on the sword leaderboard. He was different from Jiang Fengmian's humble and low-key personality. Shangguan Jingshan's personality was just like his name. He was extremely arrogant and domineering. Shangguan Yan knew that with Shangguan Jingshan's personality, if he found out about this, he definitely wouldn't let Yi Guchen off. Mu Xingzu blushed slightly when she sensed the strange and astonished gazes around her. She really missed him too much, so she didn't have any scruples. Did Xingzhu cause trouble for master? Mu Xingzu asked embarrassedly with tears in her starry eyes. She naturally could not address Yi Guchen as senior brother Yi in front of so many people. Xingzhu, you've also become so outstanding. Yi Guchen patted Mu Xingzu's head. In his eyes, there was only the appreciation of a senior looking at a junior. Mu Xingzu lowered her head shyly. She would only return to her original personality in front of Yi Guchen. At this moment, a faint voice sounded. It's better to see than to hear. I didn't expect Miss Mu's rumored mysterious master to be you, Sword Demon Duguwubai. When Yi Guchen heard this, he revealed a strange expression and glanced over. A blue-haired, cultured, and elegant young man walked through the air with a smile that seemed to contain a deep meaning at the corner of his mouth. Ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard, Jiang Fengmian. Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. Everyone looked over. Was the Azura arena going to unfold next? Chapter 9-10. Jiang Fengmian was famous in the Sword Dynasty. He was a peerless genius ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard, a divine palace genius. His background, strength, and appearance were all perfect. Such a person was naturally sought after by tens of thousands of people. He was the dream lover of many young girls in the Sword Dynasty. And Jiang Fengmian's personality was very single-minded. He had always pursued Mu Xingzu, even though there was no result. At this moment, Jiang Fengmian finally couldn't hold himself back and walked out to ask, Jiang Fengmian, what is the meaning of this? Mu Xingzu's beautiful face darkened slightly. Although her attitude towards Jiang Fengmian couldn't be said to be very good, she didn't dislike him either. At least compared to the pestering Shangguan Jingshan, Jiang Fengmian was a modest gentleman. He would never do anything that crossed the line. But as long as the matter concerned Yi Guchen, Mu Xingzu would become very sensitive. If Jiang Fengmian targeted Yi Guchen, Mu Xingzu would never allow it. Can't I just say hello? Jiang Fengmian spread his hands. Mu Xingzu was too protective of Yi Guchen. 5th on the sword leaderboard, Jiang Fengmian. This one has long heard of your name. Yi Guchen said indifferently. How can he compare to Brother Dugu? He's not famous, but when he does, he amazes the world. As expected of Miss Mu's master. It's just that. I'm very curious. How did Brother Dugu teach Miss Mu? To think that she would reject the dean's request to take her in as a disciple. Jiang Fengmian's eyes narrowed slightly as he played with a maple leaf in his hand. Yi Guchen didn't expect that Mu Xingzu would reject the offer of Tianxian College's dean because of her. I, Mu Xingzu, will only ever have one master, Jiang Fengmian. Why are you saying all this? Mu Xingzu increasingly disliked Jiang Fengmian's tone. It's nothing. I was just curious and wanted to ask Brother Dugu for advice. As Jiang Fengmian spoke, maple leaves began to fall from the sky. The maple was red like fire, but it carried a chilling sword-intent aura. Jiang Fengmian stood tall amidst the dancing red maples. His long blue hair fluttered in the wind, making him look otherworldly. The people and scenery blended together, creating an extremely beautiful scene. However, it also carried a murderous aura of autumn. Is Jiang Fengmian going to attack Dugu Wubai? Cries of surprise rang out one after another from the surroundings. There was absolutely no doubt about Jiang Fengmian's strength. He could easily wipe out Hua Xingjie and the other heaven prides by himself. After all, the heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage were considered top existences in the South Horizon region. Not to mention that in the Sword Dynasty, only the top 10 heaven prides on the sword list were existences of the divine dwelling stage. Divine dwelling stage. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows, but there wasn't the slightest fear on his face. With his current strength, he no longer needed to fear the divine dwelling stage. Not to mention that he had also obtained the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, which had caused Yi Guchen's combat strength to soar once again. In the past, he had to risk his life in a battle against Gu Xiaoyang, who was of the divine dwelling stage. But now, Yi Guchen had stepped into the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. For him, the divine dwelling stage was only a slightly stronger opponent. Stop, Jiang Fengmian, don't be presumptuous in front of Master. Mu Xingzu stood in front of Yi Guchen. Although she had instinctive confidence in Yi Guchen, no matter what, the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge was bound to be at a disadvantage against someone of the divine dwelling stage. Enough, Jiang Fengmian, there is still the matter of the Academy's enrollment. Don't interrupt, Beixian Elder said. Seeing that Mu Xingzu and Beixian Elder had spoken, Jiang Fengmian revealed a faint smile. Fine, I was rude. But in the future, I will certainly ask Brother Dugu for advice. Everyone revealed a strange expression. It seemed that because of Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian was going to clash with Yi Guchen. I will definitely accompany you to the end. Yi Guchen smiled. He came to the Sword Dynasty to gain experience, so he would naturally accept all challenges. Who do you think will win between Dugu Wubai and Jiang Fengmian? Of course it will be young Master Jiang. Although Dugu Wubai is not weak, he only has the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Many people present began to discuss. But the majority of people were still optimistic about Jiang Fengmian. After all, Jiang Fengmian had been famous for a long time, and was a divine dwelling heaven pride. In contrast, although Yi Guchen was amazing, his achievements were limited. He could easily defeat Hua Xingjie and a group of heaven prides, including the top 10 heaven prides on the sword ranking. Okay, the 5 academies selection is over. Next is the time to choose the academy. Our Tensei College is the head of the 5 great academies. We have abundant resources and countless experts. I believe that everyone will make a wise choice. In the sky, Elder Hua Emo took a step forward and spoke in a clear voice. The 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty were Tensei College, Sun Moon College, Long River College, Tianxian College and Sacred Cliff College. Tensei College was indeed the head of the 5 great academies. In the past 5 academies competition, Tensei College had also dominated. Hua Mo's words were more for Yi Guchen to hear. In his opinion, with Yi Guchen's talent, his best choice was naturally to join Tensei College. As soon as Elder Hua Mo finished speaking, many heaven prides who passed the selection immediately joined Tensei College. Kong Kong Han Lingxian, and the others all looked at Yi Guchen. Yan Chou seemed to be waiting for Yi Guchen's decision. Yi Guchen pondered for a moment. When Hua Mo saw this, he frowned slightly. This was different from what he had expected. Yi Guchen should have chosen Tensei College without any hesitation. Thinking of this, Hua Mo couldn't help but say, "Dugu Wu Bai, your talent and strength are indeed good. If you join Tensei College, your strength will definitely improve." Although Hua Mo was a little unhappy that Yi Guchen had stepped on Hua Wuxiao and Hua Xingjie to get to the top, Yi Guchen's talent was still outstanding. However, Yi Guchen's talent was there after all. Hua Mo could not give up recruiting Yi Guchen because of this. Tisk, he's indeed the Sword Devil. The elders of the academy actually took the initiative to recruit him. Some of the surrounding heaven prides looked on enviously. "What are you talking about, Hua Mo? Who was the one who said that he would never accept a level 3 Heaven and Earth Bridge disciple and give him to Sacred Cliff College? Are you going back on your words?" Beixian Elder was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at Hua Mo. Hua Mo said calmly, "I didn't know that he was the Sword Devil at that time. Now that I know, I will try my best to fight for him." Hua Mo's face didn't turn red and his heart didn't beat fast. "You are really shameless." Beixian Elder's hair and beard stood on end as he glared at Hua Mo's Sacred Cliff College finally had a chance to pick up the Sword Devil, but Hua Mo went back on his words. In this way, it was obvious that the Sword Devil would choose a college. Even Beixian Elder himself didn't think that Yi Guchen would abandon the top of the 5 colleges and choose Sacred Cliff College, the last of the 5 colleges. Yi Guchen's eyes were still calm. He didn't feel any joy because of Hua Mo's recruitment. This was because he saw Hua Tingfei standing behind Hua Mo. At this moment, Hua Tingfei's eyes were also cold. If Yi Guchen chose Tensei College, he would be in a lot of trouble. Yi Guchen had also heard that Tensei College seemed to be completely controlled by the Hua family. He had cut off one of Hua Tingfei's arms and made Hua Xingjie so miserable. Joining Tensei College was no different from asking for trouble. Besides, the sword monk Xuanlian, who ranked 4th on the sword roll, was in Sacred Cliff College. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't think too much about it and said directly, "I choose Sacred Cliff College." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. Chapter 9:11. Many people thought that they were hallucinating. However, there were even more people who didn't believe it. "Dugu Wu Bai, what did you just say? Say it again." Even Elder Hua Mo thought that he had misheard. Although they were both part of the 5 great colleges, the difference between Tensei College and Sacred Cliff College was like heaven and earth. Anyone with the slightest discernment ability would know which academy to choose. "I choose the Divine Cliff Academy." Yi Guchen was neither servile nor overbearing, and his tone was indifferent. Mu Xingzu didn't say anything, even though she knew that Sacred Cliff College was the weakest of the 5 great colleges. However, Yi Guchen must have his reasons for choosing Sacred Cliff College. Mu Xingzu wouldn't influence Yi Guchen's decision. Am I dreaming? Beixian Elder was stunned. Yi Guchen's choice was a blessing from the heavens for Sacred Cliff College. In the past 5 academy selection, there had never been a champion who chose the Divine Cliff Academy. "Dugu Wu Bai, do you know how stupid your choice is?" Hua Mo's face darkened. Since Yi Guchen was willing to join Tensei College, Hua Mo naturally wouldn't care about Hua Xingjie. He would even pull Yi Guchen into the Hua family and train him to become the pride of the Hua family. However, he didn't expect Yi Guchen to be so tactless. "It's my freedom to choose. Elder, you don't have to interfere." Yi Guchen's expression was cold. He didn't like Hua Mo's attitude. Yi Guchen's choice caused an uproar. The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord heaved a sigh of relief. With Yi Guchen's innate talent, who knew what kind of monster he would become if he was nurtured by Tensei College? However, if he were to enter Sacred Cliff College, which was ranked last among the 5 great colleges, then Yi Guchen's growth would undoubtedly be greatly limited. But what they didn't know was that Yi Guchen didn't need anyone to teach him. He only needed some resources to improve himself. The academy wasn't Yi Guchen's ultimate goal. It was just a temporary place. Yi Guchen's real goal was to become the Sword Son, participate in the Battle of Prodigies, and join an Overlord-level force. Good, very good. Huayamo took a deep breath. This was the first time a prodigy had rejected Tensei College's request. When Han Lingxian saw that Yi Guqin had joined Sacred Cliff College, she also chose to join Sacred Cliff College without hesitation. Kong Kong also chose to join Sacred Cliff College. Even Yin Choku had chosen the Divine Cliff Academy. Elder Huamo's face was incomparably gloomy. Yi Guqin's action had thoroughly offended Tensei College's dignity. Haha, old man Huamo, a force melon won't be sweet. Beixian Elder laughed heartily. He was in an extremely good mood. Elder Huamo's face was gloomy. Every prodigy had the right to make their own choices in the 5 great colleges selection. Huayamo couldn't force Yi Guqin to join Tensei College. However, at this moment, Hua Tengfei, who was standing behind Huayamo, suddenly stood up. His eyes were filled with resentment as he said, "Elder Huayamo, I have something to report." "What is it?" Huamo's tone was cold. It was obvious that he was still angry at Yi Guqin's choice. "My hand was dislocated by Dugu Bai," Hua Tengfei said loudly, his voice echoing in all directions. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. No matter how bad Hua Tengfei was, he was still a member of the Hua family. In the Sword Dynasty, offending the Hua family was tantamount to courting death. "What did you say? Your hand was dislocated by Dugu Wu Bai?" Huamo's face froze, and then a trace of joy appeared in his eyes. For him, it didn't matter whether Hua Tengfei's hand was dislocated or not, because Hua Tengfei's talent was limited. However, it couldn't be better if he could use this as an excuse to suppress Yi Guqin. "Nonsense, Huayamo. Are you looking for an excuse to deal with Dugu Wu Bai?" Beixian Elder immediately shouted. In his opinion, Huayamo must have instructed Hua Tengfei to slander Yi Guqin. "What I said is not a lie. Many people in the Cloud Dynasty can testify. Even some people here can testify. Han Lingxian, don't you agree?" Hua Tengfei took a step forward and shouted. His eyes turned to Han Lingxian. Han Lingshuan's delicate face turned pale. Who would have thought that the situation that was supposed to be settled would have such a turn of events? Seeing that Yi Guqin didn't join Tensei College, Hua Tengfei immediately jumped out to make things difficult for Yi Guqin. However, this was the truth. Countless gazes turned to Han Lingxian in unison. Han Lingshuan's face changed. Although she didn't want anything to happen to Yi Guqin, it was difficult for her to lie in front of everyone. "There's no need to prove anything. I was the one who cut off Hua Tengfei's arm." Yi Guqin put his hands behind his back and looked indifferent. The corners of many people's eyes twitched. Yi Guqin was probably the only person who could say such a thing in public with such a calm attitude. After all, not everyone had the courage to offend the Hua family. This is going to be troublesome. Beixian Elder's face darkened. This Dugu Wu Bai is too good at causing trouble. Shangguan Yin also murmured, "Good boy, you can still be so calm after cutting off the arm of our Hua family's disciple. Who gave you the courage?" Huamo's mouth curved into an undetectable smile. He wanted to lure Yi Guqin into a trap. He deserves it. Yi Guqin said indifferently. Many people swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Yi Guqin's words were tit for tat. You're courting death." The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord both sneered. Yi Guqin's actions were really courting death. Although you've made a big mistake, the Hua family is not unreasonable. We'll give you 3 choices. First, let Hua Tengfei cut off your arm. It's an eye for an eye. Second, hand over the 9 Dragon Thunder prison as compensation. Third, join Tensei College. Not only will all the grudges be written off, but the Hua family will also train you. Huayamo said indifferently. Once these 3 choices were made, it caused an uproar like a tide. Only a fool would choose the first choice. For a swordsman, the arm was very important. If it was cut off, even if a new arm was made with a Saint Elixir, it would be far less flexible than the original arm. The second choice was also very disadvantageous. The value of the 9 Dragon Thunder prison was obvious. In the eyes of the crowd, the third choice seemed to be the most reliable. They didn't have to pay any price and would be trained by the Hua family. "Old man Huayamo, you've gone too far. Beishian elder was furious. This choice was obviously to force Yi Guchen to join Tensei College. Let me warn you. It's best if no one interferes in this matter. After all, Dugu Wubai hurt a disciple of the Hua family. It's impossible for him not to pay any price. Huaimo said coldly. In the Sword Dynasty, the Hua family's prestige was unparalleled. Beishian elder's face flushed red. Huaimo was right, and he couldn't refute it. Yi Guchen's expression was still indifferent. How could he not know that if he chose the third option, then the final outcome would only be to become a puppet of the Hua clan, and be used by them? Sorry, my choices. Not a single one. Chapter 9:12. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, everyone's face was full of astonishment. To some extent, Yi Guchen had indeed made the fourth choice out of the three. That was courting death. Dugu Wubai, you're making fun of me. Huaimo stepped out of the void and unleashed his celestial palace venerable aura. The entire sky changed color as if it was disturbed by Huaimo's aura. As an elder of Tensei College, Huaimo's strength was unquestionable. Feeling the oncoming storm, Yi Guchen stood in the void and did not move at all. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression was as calm as water. Everyone was slightly speechless when they saw this scene. It was indeed impressive to be able to maintain such composure in front of a venerable. Keep pretending. Let's see how you're going to deal with this. At this moment, Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan, Yin Wufeng, and the others, who had been beaten up by Yi Guchen, woke up. Although they still couldn't move, at least they were still conscious. Yu Shuangyan looked at Yi Guchen in the sky with resentment. She wanted to know how Yi Guchen would deal with this situation. Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and the others were also staring at him. Han Lingshuan's heart clenched. In her eyes, the Hua family was a giant that she could only look up to. Although Yi Guchen was amazing, he hadn't grown up yet. Compared to the Hua family, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Everyone was curious about how Yi Guchen would deal with this situation. Dugu Wubai, I'll give you one last chance. What's your choice? Venerable Huaimo's aura covered the sky and made it difficult for many geniuses to breathe. Huaimo, you've gone too far. Beishian elder also stepped out. This is my Hua family's business. Are you sure you want to get involved? Huaimo threatened. Beishian elder was stunned. Yi Guchen had cut off Hua Tingfei's arm. This was an ironclad fact that even he had admitted to it. If Beishian elder were to make a move, he would not be in the right. Dugu boundless. Weren't you arrogant? Now you have nothing to say? Hua Tingfei stood out, his face full of satisfaction. He never thought that Yi Guchen would actually walk right into his trap and openly admit this fact. It's just cutting off one of your arms. So what if I take your life? Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. Crazy. When everyone heard Yi Guchen's words, they thought he was crazy. How could he say such words in front of Huaimo, in front of so many people? No one could protect Yi Guchen. Even if he were to become a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, it would affect the dignity of the Hua family. Dugu Wubai, I dare you to say that again. Huaimo was infuriated. He had originally planned to recruit Yi Guchen into the Hua family, and then control him so that he could be used by the Hua family. However, Yi Guchen's attitude now could be said to be contempt for the Hua family. Dugu Wubai, you've really lost your mind. So what if you won first place in this selection? With such a temperament, it's no wonder you're called the Sword Demon. Hua Tingfei was also furious. This person is the Sword Demon, a demon. Even the prodigies of the Purple Smoke Ridge were massacred by him. The Purple Smoke Overlord shouted. Indeed, the Sword Demon's murderous nature is too strong. If he were to be trained in the college, it would not be a blessing for the Sword Dynasty. The Yellow Dragon Overlord shouted. Their shouts caused a lot of discussion among the crowd. You're shameless. Qin Paisai and the others were so angry that their bodies trembled. They were the ones who had attacked first, but now they were slandering Yi Guchen for his murderous nature. Are you done? Yi Guchen's eyes were cold. No matter what, Dugu Wubai, I'll suppress you today so that you can repent and reflect. Huaimo was about to attack. How dare you? Beishian elder's eyes widened in anger. Yi Guchen was already a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, but Hua Emo still dared to suppress him in front of him. Just as Hua Emo was about to attack, Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. He slowly took out a token and said coldly, "Open your dog eyes and see if I'm qualified to cut off Hua Tingfei's arm." The medallion was shaped like a sword, and it was shining brightly. That's the Sword Master's token. It's the Sword Master's token. How is that possible? Everyone's eyes were focused on the token in Yi Guchen's hand. Some of the lords were stunned, and then lost their voices. The token was the Sword Master's token that Kempo had given to Yi Guchen. Saber 9 and Yi Guchen were the only ones who knew about the gift of the token. Therefore, Yi Guchen was not afraid that his identity would be exposed if he took out the Sword Master's token. This is the Sword Master's token? Hua Mo's movements froze as if he was frozen. The Sword Master's token had special rights in the Sword Dynasty. Seeing the Sword Master's token was like seeing the Sword Master himself. In other words, the moment Yi Guchen took out the Sword Master's token, his identity was comparable to the Sword Master. The Sword Master's status in the Sword Dynasty was equivalent to that of the princes of other dynasties. Would Hua Emo dare to suppress a prince in front of everyone? No, I don't believe it. How can you have the Sword Master's token? Who are you? Hua Tingfei shook his head in disbelief, his breathing almost stopped. The Sword Master's token was extremely rare. There were only a few pieces in the entire Sword Dynasty. It's fake, it must be fake. Hua Xingjie Yushuangyan, and the others also couldn't believe it. Do you know the consequences of forging the Sword Master's token in the Sword Dynasty? Hua Emo said coldly. The Sword Master's token represented the Sword Master's identity. In the Sword Dynasty, if someone was found to have forged the Sword Master's token, they would be executed immediately. Young Master Dugu. Han Lingxuan's heart tightened. Not to mention the outsiders, even Han Lingxian and the others couldn't believe that Yi Guchen had the Sword Master's token. The Sword Master's token was too rare, and there were only a few pieces in total. Han Lingxian knew that Yi Guchen came from another dynasty, so how could he have the Sword Dynasty's Sword Master's token? You can try it. Yi Guchen threw the Sword Master's token to Bei Xian Elder. Bei Xian Elder caught the token and looked at it. His eyes were filled with shock and doubt. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Bei Xian Elder. Whether the Sword Master's token was real or fake, these elders could tell at a glance. It's the real Sword Master's token. Hua Emo, you can take a look if you don't believe me. Bei Xian Elder said and handed the Sword Master's token to Hua Emo. Hua Emo snatched the token and looked at it carefully. His face instantly turned ugly. Seeing Hua Mo's expression, how could the others not know? The token Yi Guchen took out was indeed the real Sword Master's token. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. First, he broke Hua Wuxia's sword move. Then he used the 3 brilliant lights. Then he pulled out the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison that even Hua Wuxia couldn't pull out. Now he even took out the Sword Master's token. How many trump cards does this Sword Demon Duguwubai have? This. Han Lingxian was also dumbfounded. Yi Guchen always exceeded her expectations. At this moment, many people looked at Hua Emo, Hua Tingfei, and the others with a hint of playfulness. Since Yi Guchen took out the Sword Master's token, it would be impossible for Hua Emo to suppress and punish Yi Guchen today. Chapter 9:13. Hua Mo's hand trembled with anger as he held the Sword Master token. He carefully examined the token, not letting go of any detail. He wanted to find any flaws. However, this token was given to Yi Guchen by Kempo. How could it be fake? Even if Hua Emo stared at it with his eyes wide open, he couldn't find any traces of forgery. Elder Hua Emo, it can't be real. Hua Tingfei's expression was extremely ugly. If Yi Guchen didn't have any tricks up his sleeve, he was destined to fall into the hands of the Hua family. However, Yi Guchen had the Sword Master token, so it was a different story. As a prince, cutting off Hua Tingfei's arm wasn't a big deal. Not to mention Hua Tingfei, even cutting off Hua Wuxia's arm wouldn't be a big deal. The Sword Master had such a high status in the Sword Dynasty. This was also the reason why all the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty wanted to compete for the position of Sword Master. Hua Emo threw the Sword Master token to Yi Guchen with a cold face. Yi Guchen kept it with a calm expression. The Sword Master token is extremely rare and precious in the Sword Dynasty. Where did you get it from? Hua Emo questioned. Do I need to tell you? Yi Guchen's eyes darkened. Hua Emo had made things difficult for Yi Guchen over and over again. This made Yi Guchen's heart turn cold. Enough, Hua Emo. Do you really think the Hua family can cover the sky in the Sword Dynasty? Since Dugu Wubai took out the Sword Master token, his status is just like a Sword Master. Are you going to question a Sword Master? Beixian Elder couldn't stand it anymore and shouted coldly. Hua Mo's expression changed when he heard this. With his status, he really didn't have the qualifications to question a Sword Master. Elder, let's just forget about it. My arm. Hua Tingfei was disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. He thought that he could use this opportunity to target Yi Guchen and embarrass him. Who would have thought that he would be the one embarrassed? What else can I do, you trash? Hua Emo slapped Hua Tingfei and sent him flying. Hua Tingfei spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was swollen like a bun. You trash, your talent is mediocre, and you only know how to cause trouble for the family all day long. Hua Emo couldn't find anyone to vent his anger on, so he could only vent his anger on Hua Tengfei and violently slap his face. If there was no enmity between Hua Tingfei and Yi Guchen, perhaps Hua Emo could find a way to remedy the situation. Hua Tingfei was stunned by the slap. His face was bruised and the corners of his mouth were cracked. Looking at the Hua family members who could only swallow their broken teeth, many of the feudal lords present were speechless. Some of the lords from the rogue cultivator camp looked at Yi Guchen with admiration. In the Sword Dynasty, it had been a long time since anyone dared to directly oppose the Hua family. Yi Guchen's action could be said to be against universal condemnation. How could it be like this? The faces of the Purple Smoke feudal lord and the Yellow Dragon feudal lord turned ashen. The moment Yi Guchen took out the Sword Sun token, they knew in their hearts that they couldn't take revenge. In the Sword Dynasty, taking revenge on a Sword Sun was like courting death. Although Yi Guchen wasn't a real Sword Sun, as long as he had the Sword Sun token, he was a Sword Sun. Qin Jun, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others had their horizons broadened. Yi Guchen was like a real dragon that was lying dormant in the grass. Once he made a move, it was shocking. The more I look at this kid, the more I like him. Beixian Elder smiled. Just when everyone thought that the storm would end, a faint voice suddenly sounded. A faint voice suddenly spread from the sky. Heroes come from the young. Today you have opened my eyes. Although the voice wasn't loud, it seemed to reach everyone's ears. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed, and he frowned slightly. He had experienced this kind of power before. In the void, space twisted, and an old man in a purple and gold robe appeared. The void around him trembled slightly, as if it couldn't withstand the vigorous power in the old man's body. This old man was a false saint expert. First Elder. Seeing this, Hua Emo bowed. It's the first elder of Tensei College, Hua Yintao. He's a false saint expert. The crowd was in an uproar. A false saint expert was definitely a top existence in the entire Sword Dynasty. They were the pillars of the dynasty. Hua Yintao was not only the first elder of Tensei College, but also a false saint expert of the Hua family. He's here? Beixian Elder's face froze. In front of Hua Yintao, he wasn't qualified to say anything. They weren't even on the same level. Why is the first elder of Tensei College here? It's most likely because of the commotion caused by the 3 great heavenly gates that attracted the attention of these big shots. Some people guessed. In the past 5 academies selection, the false saint experts of the 5 academies wouldn't appear. This time, Yi Guchen must have attracted the attention of these big shots because he triggered the 3 lights illuminating the world. Dugu Wubai, you're indeed admirable. In this world, there's no hatred that can't be resolved. If you join Tensei College, everything will be written off. The first elder, Hua Yintao, said calmly. As soon as these words came out, many people sighed with emotion. He was indeed a false saint first elder. His bearing and breadth of mind were definitely not comparable to Hua Emo and the others. But how could Yi Guchen believe Hua Yintao's words? He and the Hua family had already formed quite a bit of enmity. It could be said that Yi Guchen became famous by stepping on the Hua family's genius. Hua Yuntao seemed to be quite broad-minded, but he also wanted to control Yi Guchen and use him for the Hua family. Thank you for your kindness, First Elder, but I've already chosen Sacred Cliff College. I can only say sorry, Yi Guchen said calmly. He actually refused. Everyone was stunned. A false saint First Elder had personally invited him. How could he be so untactful? Dugu Wubai is too arrogant. Hua Xingjie In Wufeng, Yu Shuangyan, and the other geniuses couldn't help but say. Not to mention them, even the onlookers around felt that Yi Guchen was a little arrogant. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. You may not understand. Well, I'll let you join Tensei College first. Then you'll naturally understand my painstaking efforts. Hua Yuntao said and waved his hand lightly. Yi Guchen immediately felt that the surrounding air was compressed, and the void seemed to have condensed into a cage to imprison him. Mu Xingzu and Yi Guchen stood side by side, and also felt the pressure of this aura. Hua Yuntao was going to take Yi Guchen away by force. Elder Hua, don't you think you've gone too far? Beixian Elder suppressed his anger and said. Such an unpolished gem will only be buried in Sacred Cliff College. Hua Yuntao didn't care about Beixian Elder at all. He looked at Yi Guchen, who was being imprisoned and was about to be taken away by force. Everyone in the audience sighed in their hearts. Who could stop a false saint First Elder? No one can control the path of the sword demon. I'll decide my own path. Yi Guchen's long hair fluttered in the wind as he shouted coldly. A vigorous aura suddenly burst out. At the same time, the Azura sword Dao exploded, and the blood-red sword light swept out in all directions. He held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. An endless lightning accompanied by the blood-red sword light burst out. When the sword came out, it was as if the heavens were falling and all living beings were grieving together. Azura tribulation, the fall of all living beings. Yi Guchen didn't have any scruples and directly attacked Hua Yuntao with his sword. This move shocked the eyes of tens of thousands. Chapter 9:14. What kind of existence was a false saint? Even if they had not really passed the heavenly tribulation, they were still the strongest under the heavenly tribulation saint. Not to mention the Sword Dynasty, even in the overlord forces, the dignity of a false saint was not to be violated. But now Yi Guchen, a mere fourth-stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth, dared to draw his sword against a false saint. Crazy. Everyone thought that Yi Guchen had gone crazy. No false saint could tolerate the provocation of an ant. Not to mention that an existence like Yi Guchen was inferior to an ant in front of a false saint. At best, he could only be regarded as dust. The blood-red sword chi seemed to want to cut through the 8 desolate lands. Mixed with the lightning power of the 9-dragon thunder prison, it had a terrifying power that could break the 10 realms of the heavens. Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan and the others saw this scene, their pupils trembling. If Yi Guchen had used this method against them before, then there would not even be a speck of them left. Is this the true strength of young Master Dugu? Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai and the others were completely dumbfounded. The Azura sword Dao plus the life fall plus the 9-dragon thunder prison. It would not be easy for the divine dwelling heaven prides in the top 10 of the sword ranking to receive this sword. Jiang Fengmian's face froze, his pupils revealing an unprecedented seriousness. He did have a trace of contempt for Yi Guchen before. However, this sliver of disdain vanished like smoke under this sword. The strength that Yi Guchen had shown was enough to threaten the top 10 heaven prides in the sword ranking. Young man, are you really so stupid? Hua Yuntao's face was still indifferent, but his tone was a little cold. Yi Guchen dared to draw his sword against him, which was an insult and contempt to a false saint. Hua Yuntao made a grabbing motion with one hand, and the terrifying sword light directly shattered in the void. The gap between Yi Guchen and a false saint was too big. There was no way to make up for this gap, unless Yi Guchen sacrificed himself again and borrowed the sword from the heavens. Since that's the case, I'll give you a small punishment. Hua Yuntao's 5 fingers closed, and his true chi resonated with the void. Yi Guchen immediately felt that the surrounding air seemed to have become harder than metal. It was as if there were countless iron walls were pressing against him. Although a false saint expert's ability to control over space was a true saint expert, it was much stronger than a true saint expert. Cough! Yi Guchen felt as if he was being crushed by a mountain. His bones were cracking, and his skin seemed to be on the verge of cracking. Blood flowed down from the corner of Yi Guchen's mouth. Not only that, but Mu Xingzhu, who was beside him, was also affected. Yi Xianxian was of Xianshui was Yi. Yi Sixian was to Xian. Mu Xingzhu stood by Yi Guchen's side and endured Hua Yuntao's pressure. No. I'll go through thick and thin with you. Everyone looked at Yi Guchen, who was coughing up blood. Many people in the crowd sighed. This was the consequence of offending the dignity of a false saint expert. Haha, good. So what if you're a genius? In the hands of the first elder, you're just a bug that can be crushed to death. Hua Xingjie laughed, feeling very carefree. Yu Shuangyan in Wufeng, and the others were also very satisfied. The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord were even more carefree. They couldn't wait for Hua Yuntao to crush Yi Guchen to death. This is too much. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others clenched their fists. A false saint expert actually dared to disregard his status and attack a junior of the heaven and earth spiritual bridge. Elder Hua, that's enough. No matter what, Dugu Wubai is already a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, Beixian Elder said coldly, suppressing the anger in his heart. Dugu Wubai, do you repent? Hua Yuntao said indifferently. Repent? Ah. Who in this world can make the sword demon repent? Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were firm, and his tone was resolute. His body was covered in wounds, and blood was seeping out. No matter how strong Yi Guchen's body was, it was impossible for him to resist the attack of a false saint expert. Blood was seeping out from Yi Guchen's 7 apertures. At that moment, Yi Guchen looked like a man made of blood. It was a rather terrifying sight. Master. Mu Xingzhu felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Most of Hua Yuntao's attacks were oppressing Yi Guchen, and Mu Xingzhu was only slightly affected. However, even this small impact was enough to break Mu Xingzhu's delicate body. She could not imagine what kind of pressure Yi Guchen, who was in the center of the pressure, was under. See, it's not that this old man is unreasonable, but the young people nowadays are too stubborn. Hua Yuntao shook his head slightly. He had no intention of stopping. Looking at Yi Guchen, who would rather die than submit. Those who thought Yi Guchen was too arrogant all shut their mouths. Yi Guchen's performance left them speechless. I'm Qin Zhen, the Lord of Heavenly Wind. I beg the Great Elder to be merciful. Suddenly, a loud and clear voice rang out like a sudden clap of thunder. Qin Zhen knelt on one knee and cupped his fists toward Hua Yuntao. Yi Guchen was a great benefactor to Heavenly Wind Ridge. Qin Zhen could not bear to see Yi Guchen suffer such torture. I'm Lu Yun, the Lord of Dongyan. I beg the Great Elder to stop. I'm Yan Lang, the Lord of Cloudy Mountain. I beg the Great Elder to stop. I'm Gu Zhen, the Lord of Pingyang. I beg the Great Elder to stop. Qin Zhen's actions were like a chain reaction. One by one, the lords of the Sword Dynasty knelt on one knee and begged Hua Yuntao to stop. Most of these lords were from the Free Cultivator camp. They admired Yi Guchen's character. At this moment, they were willing to speak up for Yi Guchen. Yu, Hua Yuntao's expression changed for the first time. He frowned slightly. In just a short moment, hundreds of lords knelt on one knee and begged. These pleading voices formed a vast sound wave that covered the sky and earth, and resounded through the universe. Great Elder, please stop. 1 or 2 lords did not mean much. But now, hundreds of lords had spoken up. That was equivalent to hundreds of supremacies. Even Hua Yuntao could not turn a blind eye to it. Great Elder, please stop. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and other prodigies spoke up. Elder of Tensei College, please stop. Gue Jianqiu, Yanqiu, and other prodigies also spoke up in unison. For a moment, everyone except the lords and prodigies of the aristocratic families. Everyone else spoke up to plead for Yi Guchen. Are you rebelling? Can't I even punish you a little? Hua Yuntao's tone was cold. Even with his identity as a false sage, he felt a sense of suffocation in his chest at this moment. These lords and prodigies dared to go against his authority as a false sage for Yi Guchen. Elder Hua, this is what the people want. Please stop. Beixian Elder also shouted loudly. All these voices turned into monstrous sound waves that swept through the sky and shook Hua Yuntao's eardrums. His expression was slightly ugly. The authority of a false sage could not overcome the people's hearts. However, right at this moment, a charming voice that caused one to feel numb to the bone suddenly resounded in the heavens and the earth. Old Ghost Hua, with your status, you still have the nerve to attack a junior. You can be considered to have returned to life. As this voice sounded, a beautiful and charming figure appeared in the void. Chapter 9:15. Everyone's gaze was snatched away by this beautiful figure. In the void, a beautiful figure appeared. It was an extremely mature and charming woman. She wore a tight-fitting red cheongsam that outlined her exquisite and curvaceous figure, just like a ripe peach. She had a perfect face, bright red lips, and sparkling white teeth. She was extremely charming and seductive. Her long black hair casually fell to her slender waist, which made her look lazy and charming. Looking at this beautiful figure that suddenly appeared, the world was speechless. That round and smooth figure made many of the men present swallow a mouthful of saliva. Feeling their mouths and tongues go dry, Kongkong's eyes swept across the woman's chest, and he couldn't help but feel his nose heat up, and blood spurted out of it. Oh my God, magnificent and turbulent. Kong covered his nose with both hands, trying to prevent himself from bleeding to death. The woman who suddenly appeared and stunned everyone was now looking at Hua Yuntao with a smile, but there was a dangerous light in her eyes. Old Hua, you dare to bully a disciple of Tianxian College? Aren't you afraid that I'll break your old bones? This woman was charming and graceful. However, the way she spoke had a hint of a domineering masculine woman. She stretched out her slender hand and made a grasping motion in the direction of Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu. Yi Guchen immediately felt the space around him relax. The woman's move removed Hua Yuntao's oppression. Ding! Ding! Mu Xingzu's delicate body trembled, and she stopped moving. She gasped for breath and cast a grateful look at the charming woman. What? Dean, that woman is the legendary beautiful dean of Tianxian College, Wu Hongyan? Hearing Mu Xingzu's words, many people present were speechless. The 5 deans of the 5 major colleges were all pseudo-saint experts. Although their reputation spread throughout the Sword Dynasty, few people had seen the true faces of the 5 deans. After all, pseudo-saint experts were not easy to see. This mature and beautiful woman in a red cheongsam was Wu Hongyan, the dean of Tianxian College and a saint expert. Wu Hongyan, are you really going to intervene? Hua Yuntao's expression turned serious. He did not expect Wu Hongyan to be here. Haha, how could I not know that the 3 lights illuminated the world and shook the Sword Dynasty? But you, when I wasn't here, you attacked the people of Tianxian College. How do you want to settle this debt? Wu Hongyan's tone seemed to be joking, but there was a hint of danger in it. I am educating this Dugu Wu Bai. It has nothing to do with the female student of Tianxian College, Hua Yuntao said righteously. Is that so? Then, Wu Hongyan giggled. Suddenly, she raised her jade-like hand and pressed downwards. Stop. Hua Yuntao's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Wu Hongyan to attack so directly. There was a loud bang. Hua Xingjie, In Wufeng, Yu Shuangyan, and the others on Thunder Prison Mountain were directly pressed into a deep pit. Blood gushed out of their mouths, and their bones were shattered. They fainted. Although Wu Hongyan's palm did not kill Hua Xingjie and the others, it was equivalent to crippling them. Looking at the miserable state of Hua Xingjie and the others, many people present swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They no longer looked at Wu Hongyan with the same infatuation as before. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of fear and dread. This dean seemed to be a little violent. Wu Hongyan, don't make a mistake. Hua Yuntao's aura fluctuated, and the wind and clouds changed color. Let's call it even. Old man, if you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Wu Hongyan's voice was extremely soft, but at this moment, she spoke in a domineering tone. You. Hua Yuntao's old face twitched. Facing Wu Hongyan, he really did not have any advantage. Seeing that Hua Yuntao, the fake saint first elder of Tensei College, was defeated by Wu Hongyan, many people sighed. Many people sighed in their hearts. Wu Hongyan was indeed extraordinary to be able to become the dean of the academy as a woman. At this moment, the atmosphere was a little tense. Wu Hongyan's figure flashed in front of Yi Guqin and Mu Xingzu. She looked at Yi Guqin with a pair of charming eyes and slightly narrowed her eyes. I will deal with you later. Yi Guqin was slightly taken aback, but he thought about it on second thought. It was probably about Mu Xingzu. Just as the atmosphere on Thunder Prison Mountain was gloomy, a faint laughter was heard. Well, Dean Wu, Elder Hua, let's end this here. Don't let others see the 5 colleges as a joke. A kind-looking old man with a sage-like aura appeared. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and his white robe fluttered in the wind. The most eye-catching thing was that the old man's eyebrows were connected into a line. Although the old man's aura was not as strong as Wu Hongyan's or Hua Yuntao's, it was only a little bit weaker. First Elder Ime. Beixian Elder saw who it was and heaved a sigh of relief. This first Elder Ime was the first elder of Sacred Cliff College, also known as Venerable Ime. First Elder Ime was a 9th heaven venerable. From this, one could see the difference between Sacred Cliff College and Tensei College. Tensei College's first elder was a fake saint expert, while Sacred Cliff College's first elder was only a 9th heaven venerable. Although today's matter was unpleasant, no matter what, Dugu Wubai has already joined Sacred Cliff College. Elder Hua, it's about time. First Elder Ime said calmly. I'm teaching the younger generation. Hua Yuntao's face darkened slightly. He originally wanted to force Yi Guqin to join Tensei College, but now it seemed that he had suffered a double loss. Not only did he have a grudge with Yi Guqin, but Hua Xingjie was also half crippled. At the thought of this, Hua Yuntao looked at Yi Guqin with a cold gaze. In his opinion, it was all because of Yi Guqin's ignorance that led to the current situation. Elder Hua, since Dugu Wubai is a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, then he should be taught by Sacred Cliff College. You don't have to worry about it. Also, the dean asked me to pass a message to you. First Elder Ime said calmly. What message? Hua Yuntao frowned slightly. Sacred Cliff College was the weakest of the 5 major colleges. However, the dean of Sacred Cliff College was one of the strongest among the 5 deans. The dean said to stop before going too far. First Elder Ime said meaningfully. You thumph. Hua Yuntao flung his sleeves. The dean of Sacred Cliff College was obviously warning him not to go too far. Even if he had the Hua family's background, he couldn't be fearless. Hua Yuntao exhaled deeply and looked at Yi Guqin. Dugu Wubai, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. I'll give you one last warning. Only by joining Tensei College can you truly grow. If you join, I'm confident that you'll be able to pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing and become a disciple of the Holy Emblem in a year's time. As soon as Hua Yuntao spoke these words, it caused the surroundings to be astounded, and it gave rise to a mighty uproar. Chapter 916. What? A year later, Dugu Wubai will be able to pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing? TSK, that's not a small promise. How many Holy Emblem disciples are there in the 5 academies? Back then, Hua Wuxia had to prepare for about a year and a half before he could pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing. Hua Yuntao's words shocked everyone, and they began to whisper to each other. Mount Saint Crossing was known by everyone in the Sword Dynasty. Mount Saint Crossing? Yi Guqin was slightly puzzled. He had vaguely heard of it before, but he didn't know much about it. Mu Xingzu saw the puzzlement in Yi Guqin's eyes and explained. Mount Saint Crossing is one of the 4 great mystic realms of the Sword Dynasty. It's a treasured place to test the growth and talent of a prodigy. What's the difference between it and the 3 sky gates? Yi Guqin was curious. Mount Saint Crossing has a total of 20 levels, and the test on each level is different. As long as you can pass the 10th level, it means that you have the possibility of becoming a false saint expert in the future. You can also become a Holy Emblem disciple recognized by all 5 academies. I see. Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a strange look. And if you can pass the 15th level, you are almost certain to become a false saint in the future, Mu Xingzu said. What if you can pass the 20th level? Yi Guchen asked again. No one in the Sword Dynasty has ever been able to do it. But rumor has it that if someone can reach the top of Mount Saint Crossing, then he is a legendary natural saint. Natural saint? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Natural saint means that if you don't fall in the future, you are destined to become a heavenly tribulation saint. When Mu Xingzhu said this, her tone was filled with admiration and longing. Not to mention the Sword Dynasty. Even in the entire South Horizon region, how many people could be called natural saints? Perhaps only a few prodigies like Di Haotian could be called natural saints. So that's how it is. Then what level have you reached? Yi Guchen asked. He remembered that Mu Xingzhu was also a disciple of the Holy Emblem, which meant that she had at least passed the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing. Xingzhu only barely passed the 15th level. Mu Xingzhu said in embarrassment. Yi Guchen smiled faintly and said, not bad at all. Being able to pass the 15th floor meant that Mu Xingzhu was very likely to become a false saint in the future. No wonder Wu Hongyan valued Mu Xingzhu so much. Yi Guchen knew that Mu Xingzhu was not very talented. She might not even be a venerable, let alone a false saint. However, Mu Xingzhu had received Ying Ning's inheritance. She had the innate magical powers of an 8th-class heavenly talent, the immortal soul pearl, which had greatly increased her talent. That was why she had the chance to become a false saint. Yi Guchen thought about it and became curious again. Given his talent, how many levels of Mount Saint Crossing could he pass? Could he reach the top and become a natural saint, which all the heavenly talents of the Sword Dynasty could not become? Yi Guchen was interested in Mount Saint Crossing. Dugawu Bai, what do you think? As long as you join Tensei College, I guarantee that there will be enough resources to train you. You can break through to the Divine Dwelling stage within a year. Given your talent, let alone the 10th level, it is not impossible for you to reach the 15th level, Hua Yuntao said in a low voice. In his view, all the heavenly talents could not resist this temptation. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. This condition is really too tempting. Yes, if it were me, I would definitely agree. There were many whispers in the audience. Some heavenly talents looked at Yi Guchen with undisguised envy. 1 year was enough for Yi Guchen to reach the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing. This condition was really too tempting. This had Elder Ime. Beishian Elder looked at Ime and hesitated. Ime looked at Yi Guchen indifferently and said, Dugu Wu Bai, actually, the dean also asked me to pass a message to you. Oh. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. What can the dean of the Divine Cliff sect offer? Hua Yuntao snorted. Everyone else also perked up their ears to listen. Ime cleared her throat and said, the dean said that if you join Sacred Cliff College, you will be treated the same as all the other disciples. You have to fight for everything yourself. That's it? Beishian Elder was stunned. That's it, Head Elder Ime said indifferently. The crowd wore strange looks on their faces. What was the dean of Sacred Cliff College thinking? Did he still want to recruit the sword demon? Interesting. Hua Yuntao couldn't help but laugh. The dean of the Divine Cliff College really didn't play by the rules. But so what? Even a fool would know how to choose, right? Wu Hongyan looked at Yi Guchen. She was also very curious about what this master, who made Mu Xingzhu follow him willingly, would choose. At this moment, Yi Guchen was the center of attention. They all wanted to know if Yi Guchen would change his choice. Hua Yuntao, you underestimate me, Dugu Wu Bai, Yi Guchen said indifferently. What do you mean? Hua Yuntao's face darkened. Yi Guchen dared to call him by his name. This was a great disrespect to a false saint. It's just Mount Saint Crossing. Why do I need to borrow the power of the college? In 3 months, I, Dugu Wu Bai, will break through Mount Saint Crossing. Yi Guchen raised his head, his black hair fluttering in the wind. It was as if he could soar to the clouds and swallow thousands of miles. The moment his voice fell, the surrounding void sword chi exploded, and the sky changed color. One word, the world turned upside down. Dead silence. As if all sound had been extracted, the world was dead silent. At this moment, whether it was Yi Guchen's friends, companions, or enemies, they were all dumbfounded. In 3 months, break through Mount Saint Crossing. What kind of arrogant words were these? Even Wuxia, who was third on the sword ranking, had prepared for a year and a half before breaking through Mount Saint Crossing. He had also received a lot of training from Tensei College and the Hua family. Yi Guchen was only at the Spirit Bridge stage, not even at the Divine Dwelling stage. Imei had also expressed that she would not give Yi Guchen any special treatment. In addition, there were only 3 months left. What qualifications did Yi Guchen have to break through Mount Saint Crossing? Even if he did break through, how many levels could he pass? Arrogant brat. Hua Yuntao roared, unable to restrain his anger. Yi Guchen's words in his eyes were indeed extremely arrogant. Let alone Hua Yuntao. Even those who supported Yi Guchen felt that Yi Guchen's words were too arrogant. Sai little friend Dugu is still too impulsive. Qin Jun sighed deeply. Mount Saint Crossing was one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty. How could it be so easy to break through? Hua Wuxia and the others had to be fully prepared if they were to attempt the trial. Young Master Dugu sighed. Han Lingxian bit her lip, also sighing. Yi Guchen had indeed created many miracles. But Mount Saint Crossing was a place that tested the aptitude of a saint. It was not something that could be easily passed. Otherwise, there would be more than just a few Holy Emblem disciples in the entire Sword Dynasty. A little domineering, but unfortunately, he is still a little impulsive. There was a hint of admiration in Wu Hongyan's beautiful eyes. After all, her personality could also be considered domineering. Yi Guchen's personality was very much to her liking. But as a matter of fact, even Wu Hongyan believed that no matter how talented Yi Guchen was, 3 months was too short to change anything. Passing through the holy mountain with such strength, not to mention the 10th floor, even passing through the 3rd floor would be a miracle. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.